Hello, Councilman Foley. So nice to see you.
Same here. I wish it was in person.
Well,
Next time, maybe.
soon enough.
Oh, wow.
Councilman Howe, we're ready anytime you are.
Thank you, Phil. Good evening. The time is 5:01. The Warwick City Council Finance Committee is in session. To begin, I apologize. I'm shuffling from page to page, getting back into it. There we go. If I may have a motion for acceptance of the minutes for the January 3rd meeting.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Pardon me again. I'm just going to shuffle back to the next one. I'm happy I'm able to go paperless, but I'm still learning how to go paperless. Okay. Now, seeing that all the items in the Finance Committee are below the $50,000 threshold, I would request if any member of the committee first, and then I will go to the members of the council, and then I will go to members of the public. If there is any bid item that is in the bid package they would like to discuss, please identify it. So I'll begin with the committee. Is there any item on the committee that members would like to discuss?
no for Ward 1.
Thank you.
And same for no, nothing for me.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any members of the council that would like an item from the bid package for discussion? Is there any item for discussion from the council? Thank you. Is there an item on the bid package from members of the public? Is there an item from the bid package that members of the public would like to discuss? Seeing there are none discussed, may I have a motion for acceptance of PCR 14-22?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. We'll now move on to the regular Finance Committee meeting. The agenda. May I have a motion for acceptance of the minutes on January 3rd?
So moved.
Second,
I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 2 is PCR 157-21, a resolution authorizing the adoption of the trust OPEB funding formula. Council President, or I apologize. Council President, did you want to make an opening remark on this? Or would you like to defer to the department?
Sure, yes, I would. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I believe the finance director is here, Mr. Schaefer, to present.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Mr. Schaefer.
Excuse me.
Mr. Schaefer, you're muted right now. You're muted. If you could unmute, there we go.
All right, thank you. We had this on the docket in December, and I had failed to get some information from the round interlocal trust out to you, so we continued it to this meeting. And as you know, this last budget cycle, we put a little money into the budget to really start addressing this problem. We have a firefighter's contract that has a provision in it that we're still working on to make some contributions. And we need to start this. And Phil, you have the document, I think, from the OPEB, from the Round Interlocal Trust. You have the resolution in front of you. This vehicle has been used by 26 communities and school districts around the state as a method for funding this. I talked back in December briefly about other options, and there is another option, which is we have an investment advisor who manages, gives advice to the retirement board, the treasurer, and the finance director on investing over 600 million in city funds. He's looked at what we're wanting to do here, and it's conceivable that we might get there eventually, but my recommendation is that we adopt the trust plan for the time being. I've talked to them. There's an opportunity a year, 2 years, 3 years from now to transfer this trust to something that would be administered on our own. The fees on this, for example, are under part of the reason that you see this just as the resolution and not part of the bid package. The fees would certainly be well under $1,000 the first year, probably less than $2,500 the second year. It depends upon how much money we put in. If we get to a point where we have $5 or $10 million in the trust, then certainly we should think about doing this on our own with our own investment advisor. But right now, I've heard so many good things from the other cities and towns that are participating in this. This is my recommendation to you. And you see some of the language in the resolution about this is a way to put money together. It doesn't not guarantee or guarantee employees the rights that they already have. And there's 3 components to the fee structure, which, as I said, generates a small sum of really small fees for them, but significant fees for them if you get to be a large entity. They're really upfronting the cost to us. That's what I would say. And we would make some other decision maybe down the road. And I'm ready to answer any questions. The one thing, the date is still on there from December 21st. I think we'd have to amend the date to, if you're ready to proceed today, to January 19th, 2022. At that point, by the way, we appropriated $250,000 in the budget last year. We would shortly thereafter transfer that amount of money to this OPEB trust, and it would be a vehicle for, and I'm going to be talking about this in the full council meeting, some other things that we're considering about long-term, which will be part of the budget this coming year on funding OPEB.
Thank you, Mr. Director. I would like to open it up to members of my committee and see if they have any questions or concerns on the presentation. Councilman Gebhardt, did I see your hand up? I apologize.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Thanks, Chairman. And thanks, Director. Not so much a concern, but the one question that I had, you touched on, but I'm wondering if you could give us a little bit more detail, was just, you mentioned having spoken with some of the other communities who have made use of this program.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you could give us any more of the kind of color of their references in terms to their participation.
Well, I've certainly talked with Joe Balducci, Cranston Public Schools. I've talked to the school business
on
manager.
the spot.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I've talked to the school business manager in East Providence, whose name all of a sudden escapes me. I know his face, but I'm older than you guys. So I know that the former town manager of East Greenwich and the finance director in East Greenwich, Trish Sunderland, are comfortable with the program. I've dealt with the Barrington finance director, Kathy Raposa, who's very enthusiastic about it. Even you remember, some of you may remember Diane Brennan, who used to be in Warwick years ago, assisting the council and the city, and then became finance director in Gloucester. She retired recently, but she's been enthusiastic about it. the turnkey. We can just start this and do this. There's no legal drafting. This resolution has been tested by 26 different entities. And one other, of course, is Brian Sylvia, the former finance director here, who's utilizing this in Smithfield. So I'm comfortable. They've done a pretty good sales job with us. I've told them, we are a little bit different than a lot of those places because we have an investment manager, successful investment manager for our pension funds. And so that it could be that 2 or 3 years ago, if we really get somewhere with this, then we would consider, there are basically 4 pension trusts set up, the fire and police 1, municipal, fire 2, police 2. We could set up another trust that would be an OPEB trust. One of the things, and I think Councilman Howe is aware of this, we've been talking at the retirement board about possibly switching custodians. We've had some problems with a custodian who keeps track of all our pension funds. They make errors. And so we're working on an RFP. And I would prefer not, frankly, if we're switching custodians, I wouldn't want to go with someone for 4 months and then make a change. So I've had a lot of enthusiasm. I'm happy dealing with the PARS group, their representatives who will be doing the real administration. It's Colleen at the trust, who's kind of the key person here, who's been very helpful on it. So that's where I am. But they're aware that we feel we have other options. We might want to make a change later on, and they're okay with that.
Got it. Yeah, no, thank you for that. I mean, certainly they've got a track record here for this program with a number of municipalities and large organizations like Cranston School Department, who, if they're having good success and managing, what I'm sure is a complicated program, then we'll have similar success. Is this one large fund that's managed all together, or is there?
Everyone's listed as a separate entity, and if you look at the package, their investment manager is Vanguard, which is a low-cost mutual fund group, and we're gonna have the option of 4 different. Let's see. Are you still hearing me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Something happened on the.
Yeah, we can hear you. It just, yeah.
And so we're going to have, I believe the treasurer is assigned as the fiduciary on this. She'll be making the judgment as to, with the very little money we're going to put in at the beginning, whether to do a very conservative or a little more aggressive portfolio. Probably be a pretty conservative portfolio for the small amount of money we have.
All right.
So they also give us the option to have sub-funds. If we want to separate out police, fire, municipal workers, they give us that option. I think that's something we have to look very carefully at. This is one big liability for the city, and I know the fire contract went down the path of associating contributions with an individual group of employees. We'll see. That's something that will come up down the road, I believe. I mean, the appropriation we made for the city was for all city employees as a beginning, as a starter for the overall OPEB liability facing the city.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Director. That was very helpful. I appreciate your answers there.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there any other comments from members of the committee? Questions? Okay, Councilman Ricks, I saw your hand up. Welcome.
Thank you. So first question for the finance director is, I want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. When you said that the OPEB contribution made by the city is for all employees. So I take it that that's referring to the $250,000 that was allocated in.
Yes.
Thank you. And when you say all employees, I'm not sure if that means all employees on the city side, active and retired?
It means it was contributed to the liability of all retired employees who are enjoying the benefit of healthcare, as
Okay.
opposed to, for example, just retired firefighters or just retired police officers or just retired municipal employees.
Okay.
And the liability that is reported in our financial statements is for all city employees, excluding school employees. That's
Okay. That makes sense. I just wanted to make sure that I was on the same page there.
Yeah.
I also wanted to just check in, mostly as a matter for the record. I'm sure that this has come up. I'm, for reference, looking at page 47 of the contract with our firefighters union. Let's see, the latest contract. And so some of those bullet points, one of them in particular is relevant here, that it reads, a separate accounting with respect to each employee's contribution to the OPEB trust shall be maintained by the OPEB trust administrator. And I want to confirm here, now that we're at the formal meeting, that that's going to be part of what this vendor would be doing for us.
the answer is no. And I don't, that's probably not the answer you wanted to hear, but you know, we have met with the union. We were told when we started, as we recruited that firefighter class, and we started working with the trust and others on this, that the language of the contract precluded creating a trust. An OPEB trust in compliance with the internal section, I think it's section 115 of the Internal Revenue Service Code, because contributions to an OPEB trust have to be irrevocable. Now, we had some good conversations with the union, and the contract would have to be changed to execute that. Now, the fact of the matter is the contract expires on June 30th. There are many options going forward to address this issue, but you can't create an OPEB trust that is not irrevocable. And that's the way some of the language in that contract, and it wouldn't, it's not a complicated, I don't think it's an overly complicated change to make. We could have done it. There's some hesitation about opening the contract. I think the union is all right with us addressing this in the contract, for the contract that begins this coming July 1st.
Thank you for clarifying that. Obviously, I don't want to stray too far into those kinds of conversations, because that just wouldn't be appropriate at this stage. But I am glad to hear that that conversation is happening with the union. And I'd want to make sure to take this opportunity to just say for the record that I think it is very important for the spirit of the contract to be honored in a way that protects those employees, since this was all part of the benefit of the bargain, as I think, as was understood by all of the parties at the time. And, you know, what I am hearing is that, you know, this legal issue that came up was not foreseen by anybody at the time that the contract was entered into.
I would say that's correct from what I know. And I've looked at the record of the contract. And I was a little concerned that the current actuary who did the study testified in favor and didn't disclose that issue. And I've talked to them, and I'm going to have a proposal at the next meeting to switch actuaries, partly for that, a little bit for that reason, mainly for other reasons. And then I'd like to look at our pension and OPEB liabilities together, and that means using the actuary the city's used for a quarter of a century to help us fund our pension plans. And those numbers are looking pretty good now, and I think it's going to help us address OPEB. And I need, but you're going to see that at the next meeting.
So if we could just do, stick a little more closely to the parameters of the creation of this OPEB trust, the item before us, please.
Thank you. I'll be sure to wrap up questions along that line. So with the creation of this OPEB trust, and I am glad that it's going to be going forward upon its creation, all done in a legal manner. And I'm glad that going forward, we're going to have an actuary or other professionals who will hopefully be giving us better advice as opposed to telling us that we can do things when we can't. That's a huge problem. And, obviously those mistakes should not be made at this kind of level. And so I'm glad that that's also being addressed.
I don't think, I want to defend them a little bit, but I just think they were silent on this issue. That was the issue.
Well, I do have some more questions. This may not be the best forum for it. Questions along the lines of if something could be done in terms of pre-tax versus post-tax to make this work so that the spirit is honored, but that this may not be the best forum for that. So I'll simply say that I do think that the creation of this OPEB trust is the best path forward at this time. I agree with your assessment as the finance director on this, and I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Lattisaur.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm not going to continue the conversation that Councilman Ricks just generated regarding the OPEB trust that has been set up with the fire department. But from what I'm hearing, it seems as though we may have voted on a contract again that contained some language that doesn't appear now to have been legal. So this may not be the forum to discuss this tonight, but I am going to certainly ask the city council to create a forum for it to be discussed, because I think this is, I think it's a pretty significant issue. So I'm not going to go any further with this during this meeting, but that's what I'm going to be reaching out to my colleagues on the council to, you know what, let's get it on an item to be discussed on the council floor. So to go back to the original issue here that we're discussing right now, which is PCR 15721. Peter, I do have a few questions. One of them is, you had mentioned about the 250,000 that we had voted on and approved for an OPEB fund. Has that money been set aside since that vote took place?
No, it's still listed as an appropriation in the city system. And once the OPEB trust is created, the treasurer will transfer the money to the trust.
Is where it's sitting, is it sitting in any type of an interest-bearing account, or just a line item?
No, it's a line item the same way that the salt for snow removal is, and it hasn't snowed much, so there's plenty of salt money left, but it's just an appropriation in the, I've got my budget here, I think in the employee benefits category, and it hasn't been spent yet. But once the trust is created, it'll be transmitted to the trust.
Now, when this 250,000 that we've approved, the current one that you have in a line item, when that gets put into a trust, how is that going to impact our unfunded liability? How does that change the unfunded liability in a whole, or as a whole, I should say?
Well, just the financial statements, as you know, we haven't had an OPEB trust before. So our financial statements basically show what the liability that was accrued during the year, how much we spent on retiree health insurance, which is somewhere under a half, but maybe a third of the cost. So this will begin to be a credit against it. But the real reason, and I was talking about trying to get more comprehensive actuarial services on this is, and we debated back in May, you and maybe Councilman Ricks, I can't remember who else, thought we should put more money into this. And the question is—
No, I didn't say that. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Whoa. I did not
Fine.
suggest or say anything about putting more money into it. So don't put that on the record, please.
All right, I'm sorry.
Because I didn't say.
It was just me, and I'll take credit.
All right, thank you, Councilman. What we don't know is what is the right amount to put in there to get somewhere to fund this thing over a long period of time. And that's why I'll be back next month talking about using our current pension actuary to help us get there.
I think what I'm getting at, and I'm perhaps not wording it or asking it correctly, is when we have this input of funds of 250,000,
yeah,
how does that impact the financial picture of our indebtedness in terms of how does it change it? I mean, in other words, by putting 250,000 into this pension, does that on paper have an impact in the perception of what our actual unfunded liability is, how it's calculated?
Well, for the financial statements at the ending fiscal year 22, presuming we create this trust, presuming we transfer the $250,000, that will be a credit against that total liability. Now, the liability is growing by more than that every year, based upon—
Our liability now is what, about 384 million or so?
according to the work done by the actuary whose statement will be in our fiscal year 21 financial statements, yes.
So you say according to the actuary. Is this the same actuary that you just said may not be the actuary in the future?
Yes, I plan to come to you to ask you
Okay.
to make a change.
And when you say when you say according to the actuary's numbers, it's 384 million. Are you suggesting that there's a different number, or you disagree with that number?
The only thing that I have discussed with them is they didn't seem to realize that during the Avedisian administration, I think employees hired after 2015 no longer get family plan. And I don't think that that was part of their calculation. But our pension actuary doesn't think
all
it's—
employees. I don't think that was all employees. Wasn't that just unclassified employees?
I think all the new contracts go to single plan.
I'm not certain about that.
I certainly am municipal employees. I know that's the case.
I think the change was with unclassified employees, because if you remember at a recent meeting, I tried to get legislation passed that would do that, and I was told you can't do that. So
If I may, and I do
I mean,
I
I
do
think it's
apologize.
Excuse me?
Councilman, I apologize if we, I do realize you guys are having a discussion on the benefits, but I'm going to request that we focus back on the PCR and discussion and the discussion of going to the trust. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, there might have been a brief segue on that, Chairman, but the basic root of these questions is about this OPEB trust. Peter, you also said when you first started discussing this evening about the OPEB trust and the 250,000, and then perhaps something different going forward. You said if we get somewhere with this,
Yeah.
what happens if we realize we are not getting anywheres with this? What happens with the contributions that are made to the OPEB trust? Do they just sit there? And if we're not getting someplace with this, is that to suggest that this may be curtailed? Because what you had said was, if we get somewhere with this.
This is, the mayor and I have spent a fair amount of time talking about this. He would like to really tackle this problem. As you pointed out, the number is huge, and you're not going to get there tomorrow. So I have every expectation that we'll have some kind of proposal through the budget. I can talk about this a little bit more under the executive communication during the council meeting. But I know from, for example, talking to some of my colleagues and I was surprised that this is authorized, but the regulations on ARPA allow contributions from ARPA funds to OPEB trusts. Don't allow any contributions to pension funds, but they do to OPEB trusts. And there's some real opportunities, I think, because of our good investment returns and our pension funds to free up a little room here to try to do something on this. So I have every expectation that we'll have some kind of proposal that I hope the council will be comfortable with in the budget in May.
So Peter, you just brought up a good point about how this grows, et cetera. So do you plan, assuming this passes, do you plan on providing the council as well as the taxpayers a forecast or projections as to where you anticipate this to go and what the impact is going to be on this $384 million unfunded liability that is growing at the rate of, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's growing at the rate of about 11 or 12 million a year.
Yeah, and that's really absolutely. And that's why I want to switch to an actuary who's going to give us consulting service on how to get there, rather than the current actuary, who I think did a great job just reporting a number, but they weren't engaged. The city went out to bid. You took the lowest price and you got a good number, but they weren't providing any other services. And that's what we're, so that I can say what the difference is, but what the kind of contributions over a period of years needs to be to get somewhere with this. I can't tell you that right now.
Okay. No, and I wouldn't expect you to be able to either. I just want to be able to sit here and believe that at some point in the relatively near future, we're going to see some forecasts and some projections as to how these monies or contributions to this OPEB plan, how it's going to impact our unfunded liability today and how it's going to impact us in 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 years out with, reasonable assumptions. In this report from the trust, it says that it's going to be for retiree healthcare benefits only, which you explain that pretty clearly, such as medical, dental, vision, etc. So is it fair to say that someone, I would assume in finance department, in your department, that you actually have numbers for what the healthcare portions are, what the costs are of the healthcare portion, what the cost is of dental, what the cost is of prescription drugs? Do you have those numbers? Are those numbers available anywheres that will be able to show us what we actually do have in expenses regarding the healthcare costs, the
Councilman, if I may, we're discussing the PCR before us.
Yeah, I am, Mr. Chairman. That's in the PCR. That's in our package. What I'm asking about is in our package. It's found on page 3 of the OPEB presentation. So it's in the package. That's what I'm discussing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Peter, again, the question is, are those numbers going to be, or are they available? I would assume that somebody who does the books knows how much we're paying for the healthcare costs of retirees, how much the dental costs are of the retirees, and the active employees, which is just as important, how much those costs are.
Well, even in the, obviously in the budget, and let me just go to the page, breaks out that, makes it very clear how much of our cost is retirees and how much of the cost is active employees. I'm sure that dealing with them, I could get more, if I needed to, if there was any reason for it, I could get more detailed information, how much of it is pharmaceutical versus how much is a different component. But what you've been provided on page 52 of the budget, it breaks it out, how much is dental retirees, how much is healthcare. It does not, I don't have the information on, within the healthcare, how much is pharmaceutical and how much is other services. I don't have that.
Yeah, but I'm sure that, someone has that number. Obviously, if we're paying a bill of, $24, $26 million a year for healthcare, I'm sure that somewheres in the finance department, there are numbers available to give us those breakdowns. I mean, I know that in my own company, workers' comp, I have a breakdown for every single category that I have. So I know where my money's going, and I have an opportunity to challenge those numbers if I so desire. But you know what, I can reach out to you later on that, Peter. The other questions I have right now is in the actual resolution on page 2, line 8, it says, be it further resolved that the Warwick City Council hereby adopts the public agency's post-retirement healthcare plan effective December 20th, 2021. What is that public agency's post-retirement healthcare plan? Is that this document that we have from the trust, or is that a different document altogether, or documents?
I mean, by reference, I believe it's the language that's incorporated in this resolution.
but I don't see any documents in this or attached to this resolution that speaks to the quote, public agencies post-retirement healthcare plan. What is that?
Well, that's defined early.
Sorry?
There's pretty clear definition of it earlier in the resolution. That's what I would say.
Earlier in this resolution?
Yes.
Could you point it out to me?
Yeah, it is the best interest of the city, et cetera, a multi-employer tax-exempt trust performing essential government within the meaning of section 115 of the Internal Revenue Code as amended and the relevant statutory provisions of the state of Rhode Island. And it's that section 115 that is the critical element that defines the nature of it.
Okay, but I'm asking about the public agencies. First of all, what public agencies is this referring to?
I would say it's referring to the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust as which has been authorized to do this by doing a number of insurance products by the General Assembly.
So is that for certain that this public agency is the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust? Is that for certain?
Yes, absolutely. And as I said,
Okay.
as is documented here, there's 26 different municipalities participating in this plan right now.
Yeah, that's okay. The only plan I'm interested in right now is the one we're considering to participate in. And that post-retirement healthcare plan trust, where would I be able to get that document that identifies to me what this public agency, what their post-retirement healthcare plan trust is? Where could I get a copy of that document? Because it's not here.
Well, obviously from the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust.
Okay, so I'll have to reach out to them. Okay.
And I'm happy to get whatever documentation and share it with you.
That'd be great.
I
That'd be
felt
very
this was
helpful.
I felt
Do
this
that.
was satisfactory and their documentation. You seem to believe there's a reference to something more substantive, and I can certainly find that out for you.
Peter, I like to have as much information as I can when I'm considering something as large as this. And when I look at something that has a significant impact in the language, yeah, I like to look at it. Doesn't mean that I'm distrusting anything or making any speculation or any other kind. What I'm simply doing is no different to what I do in my own company. When something is presented to me to pay a bill on, I'm going to want to see everything that has anything to do with what I'm paying for. So that's the reason why. It's not distrusting anyone. Again, on the second page, line 14, it says, city's participation in the trust, including but not limited to authorizing the investment of assets in the trust, providing directions to the trustee and or the trust administrator, and authorizing disbursements from the city's trust assets, and the city shall, pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 4550, blah, blah, indemnify said plan administrator. So will the city, the finance director, finance department, us, the city council, will we be provided any reports, any financial reports to keep us apprised as to how this trust is performing, what it's doing, et cetera?
It'll be part and parcel of our annual consolidated financial report, just as you receive reports on the performance of each pension fund. This will be, and right now you receive a report on OPEB, but we're not making any contributions other than paying as you go.
Right.
So just as financial reports for fiscal year 21 of the city, which are imminent to being released, will report on the performance of pension funds. Future reports will report on the performance of our OPEB trust funds.
Peter, do you plan, or does the administration plan on having the city actuary come before the council to make a presentation? Annually?
Yes, and that's one of the things where I just talked to him yesterday, and we're going to try to come up with a date. He did not come last year, principally because of the pandemic.
Or the year before?
I'm not sure. I wasn't here. I don't know the answer to that. But we've talked about that, and his pension report will probably be out the end of February. So sometime in March or April, I hope we'll get him here.
Okay, on line 23.
Councilman, Councilman, if I may interrupt for a minute.
I have one last question.
I was just going to ask the other council members that have questions, but if you have one last, please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, it's more for an explanation. On line 24, it says execute the legal and administrative documents on behalf of the city and to take whatever additional actions are necessary to maintain the city's participation in the trust. What are these administrative documents? What are those documents that is being referred to here?
Well, the city plan administrator will be the city treasurer. You see that earlier. And
right.
So there needs to be accountability and compliance issue in the relationship between the city treasurer and the trust as to what kinds of things, what kind of signatory approval will have to go on before we make a transfer or there's a withdrawal. That's how I interpret that language. That the treasurer and the trust have to work out the details on their communication and activity and actions by the treasurer to instruct
these investments, these transfers, whatever is involved with the trust, these documents. These documents are they will they be authorized by just one person, or will two people need to authorize them, or how's that going to work?
Well, it's set up as the city treasurer, and the city treasurer has been the fiduciary in the same way. For example, surprising the finance director, I'm the fiduciary for the police pension funds, and the treasurer is the fiduciary and does all this for the fire pension plans. And it's one person. It's the way it's set up.
Okay.
Municipal employees, there's the retirement board, so it's a little more complicated.
Right.
Councilman, I do realize you were asking the question. I just want to make sure that what I wanted to do was just hit the pause button on the questions, give the other members of the council an opportunity to ask a question, and I'll be happy to go back to you. I see that, sure. Thank you. Council President McAllister.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to thank Peter for bringing this to us. This is the first time that this city has ever taken on something like this. So I think that needs to be commended by this council and by this administration, that we are addressing this issue. This is the first step. As Peter said, they're going to have multiple options going forward, multiple things coming to us, lots of times to discuss this. But I appreciate the work that he has done on this, reaching out to all those different municipalities. I appreciate all the questions that are being asked, and it's going to open up more and more questions as we move forward. But I don't want us to get lost, down the rabbit hole. But this is a good thing. This is unprecedented here in the city of Warwick. We are taking on and addressing an issue that has not been worked on. Certainly in the time that I've been on the council, and I think most of us. So I just want to point this out, that this is the first of many steps that we are doing. Lots of conversations to be had coming forward. And I really appreciate when Peter comes with us and he gives us all this information and comes with us with different options. And it's going to be over multiple meetings and multiple times that we do this. So I just wanted to thank the director for this, and again, to highlight the council's forwardness on this. This is a big thing that this council is moving forward on, and I commend my colleagues on the council and the administration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. And before is there any other members of the council that have any questions from the conversation that has happened so far? Okay, Councilman Lattiser, please continue with the question. Understand that we are discussing the PCR. Thank you.
No, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. I can direct my questions, another time.
Thank you, Councilman. And thank you, Mr. Director. Is there any other questions from members of the council? Are there any questions from members of the public? Any questions from members of the public? Hearing none, thank you so much. Solicitor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the committee and the council would so be inclined, there's a few technical and grammatical clarifications that would need to be amended in this document. They are on page 2, line 9, is an updating of the date. This item was originally drafted for us in December. We held it to this meeting, so we want to update the effective date of this from changing the December 20th, 2021 to January 19th, 2022. The second amendment is on page 2, line 16. There was a typo in the statutory reference. It should read Rhode Island General Law 45-15-16. Unfortunately, the 1 before the 6 is not there, so we need to add that. And a grammatical change is removing the ing from indemnifying so as to make it read indemnify. So those would be my suggested recommendations for the committee and the council this evening.
Okay, Chairman, if I may.
Yes, please, Councilman.
Could Councilman Lattiser pointed out one area of confusion that's also in line 9. That I think maybe I can see where he may have been confused. So if you see just prior to the date where it starts on line 8, public agencies post-retirement healthcare plan. Earlier in the document, it refers, the name is slightly different. It says Public Agencies Post-Retirement Health Care Plan Trust. I think the trust part is missing in the second part there. And that may have led to that confusion about whether this was a healthcare plan or, it's the trust. So I would just make that additional suggestion there.
Thank you, Councilman. That does make a difference.
Thank you, Councilman. I'm going to give the solicitor a moment to review.
I believe that is in order.
Thank you. So on the recommended to the committee, on the recommended changes that are now on record, are there any questions on the recommended amendments? None. On the council, are there any comments or questions on the recommended amendments as read on record by Solicitor Walsh? To the public, are there any questions on the read amendments now on record from Solicitor Walsh? Thank you. I will entertain a motion on the amendment.
Motion favorable action on the amendments.
I'll second the motion on the amendments.
We have a motion for favorable. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. May I have a motion as amended?
I move favorable action as amended.
I'll second that.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor as amended? Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you all. I'm just going to catch up on my notes real quick. Okay. Thank you all. Item number 3 is PCR 6-22. 2222 270A, formerly bid 2022 270A. Original equipment manufacturer's parts for various vehicles. Christy. There she is. Hi, Christy.
Good
You have the
evening.
floor.
We received 4 bids for the original equipment parts for various vehicles, and we are requesting to award to Factory Motor Parts, Wood Sanitary Equipment, and LaCal Equipment. The cap on this bid also goes along with the 3 other requests before you, the committee tonight. We have 4 requests that share the same bid cap. So the bid cap in total for everything is $782,100.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? So, but this is speaking, I'm sorry, let me just clarify. This is speaking only to, so this is speaking only to PCR 6-22. But does it go hand in hand with PCR 7-22? Could you clarify that for me?
Yes, each item is, each PCR is its own bid number, so to speak, but they all fall under one cap. We do this every year.
Yeah.
Just for budgeting purposes and tracking, it makes it a little bit easier to just count everything, because it's all parts, whether it's OEM or various, we put it all under $1 amount.
Got it. Thank you. I just wanted clarification. I know that question came up at one point. Thank you so much. Any questions from the committee?
And just to clarify,
Councilman,
thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify, Christy, the details in this, you probably don't see all the mechanics, but we get a bid package every week. This bid is not in this week's bid package, but it was in last meeting's bid package. So that's the bid we're referring to, right?
Yes, I had, I was actually out sick for the last meeting. So everything I had requested to hold it until tonight.
Okay, all right. Glad you're back.
Thank you.
Glad you're feeling better. Okay, I was looking for it just to make sure I was on the right page. We reviewed this last time, but ended up holding it. So thank you. That's all the clarification I needed.
thank you, Councilman. That's a great point, actually, because it did give us the extra 2 weeks to reach out, get the questions, and that's what I did. And that's where my previous question came up, where it was clarification when I had someone reach out to me. So thank you. Any of the members of the committee? All right, members of the council, Councilman Lattiser.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Hi, Christy.
Hi.
Christy, what this right now you're looking for 782,100. What was that number last year?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember. It was roughly the same. I think the difference on this request is literally about $2,000.
Okay. And what did you spend of that, say, 780,000 in fiscal year 2021?
So from the inception of the bid last February, so from February 18th, 21 to June 30th, so fiscal year 21, we spent $189,025.36. And then in fiscal year 22, from July 1 until present, we spent $389,148.04 for a gross total of $578,173.40.
So you still have an available balance of about 200,000?
That's the bid cap. it's not necessarily what's in the budget code. The budget code
Okay,
is,
okay.
they're all used also for other bids, with other vendors for other needs, you know, radiators or hydraulic parts or stuff like that. So it's not, this is just because it's so broad, this request, we incorporate, and it, because it falls over 2 fiscal years as well. So we incorporate the budgeted amount, basically.
So what you're saying is it's spending authority up to 782,000.
Correct.
Right. But that's actually what would be appropriated in the budget, right? You
Yes.
have spending authority up to that for 2 years, then you're gonna have half of it in this year's budget, half of it in last year's budget, or whatever.
So it's a spending authority over a 1-year period, regardless of what fiscal year it falls into. It just happens to fall into two different ones, almost half and half.
Yeah. Okay. And in the different line items that you have listed here, 65, 214, 215, 239, 250, 285. What do you have for an available balance of spending authority in each of those items as of now?
I actually I don't have that number with me, and it is a moving target. Honestly, hour by hour in the automotive division, but I can certainly pull those numbers and send them to you tomorrow morning. I know in 250 we have, I think, approximately $235,000 left.
Okay, well, I don't have a munis report to current date, but I did take the initiative to get a munis report in early December. And in early December, in that item you just spoke about, 65, 250, there was still 400,000 available. So you just said it's how much now? 280?
I believe it's probably around 238, 235,000.
All right, so 240,000. So of the 160,000 that has been spent out of that one particular item in the past month, has all of those automotive mechanical parts, have they all been installed or used on equipment, vehicles, etc., or is some of those in inventory?
So of that dollar amount that you just spoke of that we've spent since December is not necessarily all on parts specific to these bids. It could also have been spent under other bids for other things, but yes, the majority of the stuff goes into whatever needs repairing. We do keep certain things in inventory that, you know, if we have like an overnight issue, a rescue needs brakes, we have to keep a full set of brake shoes and pads in stock. If a rescue comes in and needs brakes, we have to keep, you know, we do have a lot of small items. We have belts, we have clamps, we have nuts and bolts, and, you know, all kinds of ancillary items that we use for auto repairs. But when it comes to the big items, you know, we keep air cans in stock because a lot of our vehicles use them. But for the most part, it's just like oil filters, air filters, that kind of stuff that we stock. We keep very little of the big items on the shelf. Just because, one, we don't have the room to keep parts for every single vehicle that we could possibly need, and two, it doesn't make sense. You know, even today, yesterday, our automotive chief was looking for a solenoid for a starter instead of buying a whole new starter. So we pinch pennies. There's no question about that. It's just been a rough year, as you know, with vehicles for us.
Right. Yeah, sure has. And Christy, so in our bid package from last meeting, you listed, you know, the vendors that you were looking to approve, which essentially is all of them. Has that changed at all, or are you still looking for the same amount of vendors, those same vendors as you had at the last in our packet the last meeting.
I haven't changed anything. Everything that we've
Okay.
requested stands.
Okay. And as you know, I have had strong objections to that type of policy in the past. But certainly we can't object to it now. You got to have flexibility, with these pots and these vendors. It just, let's put it this way, since the last meeting, it hasn't gotten any better trying to get anything of pots, materials, equipment, anything. It's just torture. And the price is not getting any better either. All right, Christy, thank you. That answers my questions on that.
Welcome.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from members of the council? Questions for PCR 6-22, members of the council? Any questions from members of the public? Members of the public? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Favorable action.
Second.
I have a motion for favorable. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 4, PCR 7-22, same situation, Chrissy, go ahead, and if you want to just go a quick description.
These are vendors that we would like to add to the bid as well for OEM parts. These are vendors that have proprietary items for a lot of the stuff that we have in our fleet. So that's the reason that we're requesting to add all of these vendors. That way we have the ability, hopefully, to get what we need when we need it.
Completely understood. I think the Councilman Lattiser perfectly explained that it's not looking, even from the last meeting, it's not looking any better any soon. And the future is also, some of the same strife. So thank you. Questions from members of the committee? Questions from members of the council? Questions from members of the council on PCR 7-22? Questions from members of the public on PCR 7-22? Thank you. Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Favorable action.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Christy. Item number 5 is PCR 8-22, various replacement automotive parts. Christy?
This is, again, shares the same cap with the last 2 bids that were presented, $782,100. This is for replacement parts. So these are the aftermarket parts that we purchase when we don't need to get an OEM. However, we're requesting to award all 10 because lately it's been, who has what, we're chasing stuff down and, different vendors. So
Okay.
It's been hard.
I understand. Thank you. Questions from members of the council, committee. I apologize. Committee. Thank you. And questions from members of the council. Councilman Lattiser.
Yes, Chairman, I need to, I don't know if I'm missing something or not. I've been listening to the sequential order that you're speaking to, and this one you just referred to as number 5. I have it as number 4 in my book, and the one prior you said 4, and I have it in 3. I just want to make sure I'm not missing something here. The first item I have in unfinished business is PCR 15721.
I have PCR 15721 is actually number 2 on mine, because on number 1, it would be PCR 14-22, resolution relative to bids. That should be number 1.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then we go in order.
The council agenda rather than the committee's agenda. The numbering would be off by 1.
Okay.
I apologize. I was not aware.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I wasn't aware it was off by 1. So from now on, I'll just do the PCR. I didn't mean to cause confusion. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the council on PCR 8-21? Questions from members of the public on PCR 8-21? Questions from the public?
22.
Correction, I apologize. PCR 8-22. Members of the council. Members of the public, PCR 8-22. Various replacement auto part. Members of the public. Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Favorable action?
Second.
I have a motion for favorable. I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all. PCR, next is PCR 9-22. Same, Christie?
It is the same. It's just another vendor that we would like to add, Cummins Sales and Service. We have a lot of Cummins engines, particularly in our garbage trucks and some of the fire apparatus. So we haven't heard of this vendor before, but we're more than happy to give them a shot and see what they have for stock and availability and keeping us going.
Understood, especially with the challenges. Okay, so this is PCR 9-22, questions from the committee. Questions from the council. Councilman Lattisaur. Councilman, you're muted.
That's very unusual. But Chris, you just reminded me of something. I've been wanting to call and I just keep forgetting. You mentioned the garbage trucks. Have you received the 3 new vehicles yet?
We've received one.
You received one of them?
Yes.
And when do you think you're going to get the other 2?
We should be getting one, I think, within the next couple of weeks. And then the vendor that is doing the build on them, not the cab and chassis, but the body side, had to wait for the pistons to come in. And they were, so it's everywhere. We had fixed a fire truck one time. We sent it out to be fixed. The vendor couldn't get a turbo for it. They couldn't get their own part. We had searched the country and our automotive chief found one in Texas.
Wow.
So
it's
been tough.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other? Oh, I apologize. Go ahead.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from members of the council? Members of the public, any questions or comments on PCR 9-22? Members of the public. Thank you. May I have a motion?
Favorable action?
Second.
I have a motion for favorable. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Next is PCR 10-22, formerly bid 2022-261, fertilizer, liquid weed control, and lime.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
So soon,
Just
Christy?
kidding, I'm not done.
You have it.
The department requests to award this bid to, sorry, bear with me one second. Site One Supply, Landscape Supply, and Noble Turf in the amount of $10,000 for 1-year period, expiring March 4th, 2023.
Thank you, Christy. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any questions from members of the council? Any questions from members of the public on PCR 10-22? Any questions on members of the public? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Favorable action?
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. The time is 6:14 p.m. and the Finance Committee is concluded and closed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next committee to meet will be the Ordinance Committee. And I believe that is available to start at this time. I'm getting the nod from the council solicitor. So Chairman Sinapi.
How's everyone doing? All committee members ready? Got the nod from Councilman Ricks. As Councilman McElroy. So first up, we have acceptance of minutes from committee meeting held on January 3rd, 2022. Do we have a motion?
Favorable action?
Second.
Motion made and seconded for favorable action. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have PCO 1-22, an ordinance requiring property owners or operators to timely notify and deliver documents to the city when they contract with the state in a manner that violates municipal zoning. This one's for me. So as everyone likely is well aware, there's been a issue at the Nilo Hotel in my ward for some months now, and it's not the first time this has happened, where the state has contracted with an entity to house individuals who are basically down on their luck, homeless, who need a place to stay for a temporary period of time. And in this case, for this contract, their goal is to get them long-term care elsewhere, long-term shelter elsewhere, to be clear, rather. Unfortunately, it has not gone well for the perspective of the community and the neighbors. I could go on at great length as to what they've had to endure, but the short answer and the very general answer is that it's not good, to put it very lightly. This will help address that, not just, well, let me rephrase. This will help address that at least in a minor way, because we can't do much from the municipal level based on talking with Solicitor Walsh. We are very much kind of hamstrung given that it's the state that's involved and it's the state that's contracting. So what little we can do is at least require them to let us know when they're going to do this, because for this contract and for this arrangement, we had no idea until after the fact and things started happening. Did we suddenly find out about the arrangement, even though we had been expecting to find out long before, given what happened on a prior occasion. So what little we can do, I'd like to do. And I see Council President's hand is up, but I want to make sure I get committee members. Do committee members have anything they wish to ask or comment?
I'll just briefly comment that I have a general understanding of what is happening in this situation. Just hearing about it from some other folks and also from reports in the media. And I do think that this ordinance is measured and proper. I'd like to thank our City Council solicitor for figuring out what we can do here. That's all. Thank you.
And to be clear, while there are significant issues like needles being found, harassment, etc., it's not necessarily those being housed at the Nilo. It's not necessarily not either, but it's not fair to say all the issues are originating from those individuals. But it is fair to say that as a result of the arrangement with Nilo, Crossroads, and the state, there are many, 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 many more issues than are ever present in that neighborhood. And the logs for the police and the fire show that. Council President McAllister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on this this ordinance. I think this affects the entire city. Councilman Sinapi drafted this because of a situation that is happening in his neighborhood, but this could happen to anywhere. And all this is calling for is that these private entities that are getting these contracts notify the city. The city then can come up with a plan, whether we need to know that we're going to have more, police presence there, or we're going to need to have, whatever the services are. If the city of Warwick is told beforehand, we can come up with a strategy. We can come up with a plan. So I think that's the minimum that we should get as a courtesy as the host of any type of situation coming on. So this is not just a situation that is unique to one particular thing. This is just identifying if a big contract is coming in from the state with a Warwick company to give notification to the city of Warwick. That's all. We can't tell the state you can't come in or anything like that, but we would like to be notified. Therefore, then we can come up with a plan if we're going to need to allocate some resources, or just be aware of the situation. It's always good to know what's going on in your city. So I think this is a very measured ordinance. I don't think it's targeting any one particular thing. I think this will be a benefit to the city of Warwick. Again, we're just looking to be notified, so we understand what's going on in our backyards, so we can keep our constituents updated, so we know what's going on. And if you can get ahead of things, even the better. So I just want to thank Chairman Sinapi. He's done a lot of work on this. He's made a lot of phone calls. He's talked to a lot of people, neighborhood meetings, and his hands are tied, and he's trying to do the best he can. And I think this is something, and when we pass things and work on things at the city council, this is for the entire city. So this is not just something that's going to affect one area. This will be a benefit. Again, it is just a simple, almost a courtesy. Let us know what's going on in our backyard. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, to the council president's point, this does benefit all parties, because once issues started happening in the area, things were communicated to Crossroads, and they actually took steps to help mitigate, steps that will actually benefit those people who are utilizing their services. So it's not like this is just, oh, it helps Warwick or it helps our citizens and we'll call it a day. This helps everyone. Councilwoman Travis.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I definitely agree with the president. I think this is great legislation. I want to thank you for doing it, because I don't think any council person would want something dumped like this in our ward without us knowing about it and seeing the impact that's going to have in our wards. Now I know the state's involved, but isn't there like a zoning violation with a nonprofit coming into that area? Is there any way we can look into it?
So that's actually why we worded it the way we did, because even members of the community brought that up, and they're right. As far as this is a hotel, supposed to be
Right.
operating as a hotel, and now it's being transformed into something very different. Unfortunately, I was informed by the city solicitor that the governor's powers in these situations with COVID, the emergency order, he can do it. He can unilaterally put this upon the cities. So at the very least, we can at least have our tiny bit of hope really is getting noticed, at least on the municipal level, because that my purpose would have been to actually have a bit more say in this, not just get noticed, but.
And at least warn the community a little bit too, so, because I know a lot of people over there, and they were like shocked to have this just come up, and there they are dealing with this whole problem. But thank you for the efforts that you put in. I think you did a great job.
Thank you. And Councilman Lattiser?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start off by first asking for your permission to be put on here as a co-sponsor with you. I think this was a really, really good effort on your part, and I support it completely. I certainly haven't been known to sugarcoat things, and I'm not about to start sugarcoating anything now. You already clarified one question for me. My question was, what gives the state, the governor, the right to just arbitrarily dismiss the administration and the legislative branch, the executive branch and the legislative branch of the city of Warwick, and just arbitrarily dismiss our zoning ordinances and do this? But you've answered that question. Apparently, the city solicitor has looked into it, and under this emergency status defense, it could be done. I think it is just unconscionable to me that such an action, and set aside what the building is being utilized for. That's not about what this issue is. It's about what has been said. This could be anything in any of our wards, and it's just arbitrarily dumped in the city of Warwick. This is what you're going to do, and not even the courtesy of reaching out to the mayor. The other question I have is, so in this particular case, there's been Obviously, there's been expenses associated here. There's police, certainly, I'm sure has been involved, perhaps fire, perhaps rescue, maybe some DPW stuff. So did the state offer to pay for our additional expenses? These are expenses the taxpayers have to incur. Were they kind enough, or was the executive branch kind enough to offer to compensate us for this? That's a question. Does anyone know?
So not to my knowledge. And to
Yeah.
be fair, as far as the cost goes, at least some of it will be paid out by insurers when it comes to the fire runs. Although if there is no insurance, I'm not sure if it's collectible, at which point we likely would be eating the cost. And when it comes to police, are we paying extra? Not necessarily, but your point is still well taken as far as these are resources that could be one place and instead they're in another and at a
Sure,
far
exactly.
higher rate than ever.
And a perfect example, Mr. Chair, is last Friday evening. So we had a significant issue in our own home, in our own police station, right? And then we had to compound it. We had another issue within a matter of hours at another place in the city where those two spots basically involved our entire police department. So yeah, it is putting a burden on our city. It's putting a burden or an additional, a potential additional need for, and in some cases, staff we don't have. The fire department the police department is down by, a certain amount of officers. This is like just bizarre to me that the courtesy wasn't extended to the mayor of the second largest city, and I know second largest could be disputed. I still believe it's the second largest city in the state, that the mayor and the city council wasn't afforded the courtesy of an advance notice. And Mr. Chairman, it could have been my ward, it could have been any of our wards that it happened in. It happened to happen in your ward. And again, we don't always see eye to eye in everything, but kudos to you for taking up this issue. And as I said, I would like to be added as a co-sponsor to this. Thank you.
Much appreciated. And of course, you're welcome to be added as a co-sponsor. Councilman Howe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to request also to be added as a co-sponsor, as I couldn't agree more. The courtesy, the right thing to do and the courteous thing to do is to communicate with the city that is going to be prepared to utilize the resources to handle anything, whether it be at the airport, within the community, or even in a residential commercial zone. Communicate it with the city. Thank you so much. And I do respectfully request to be added as a co-sponsor.
Of course, and gladly accept it. And it is scary when you think about this, when just imagine we don't have a pandemic going on. It's not really hard to think of all the other times the governor can just say, well, now I'm going to have this property. It's currently zoned this. It's going to be something else now because I said so. Or the legislature can do the same. And it's kind of scary that it could be taken to such extremes, but it's not that difficult, surprisingly. Councilman Foley?
Thank you. So I have two questions. This was instituted by the governor. Which one? Governor Raimondo or Governor McKee?
So it's my understanding that it's Governor McKee, but that is a good point. I'm not 100% fairly certain McKee, but I'd like to check. The contract started this year. Oh, sorry, I forgot it's 2022 now. Started in 2021.
So it could have been Raimondo be on her way out the door doing Warwick a favor. That's and neither here nor there. Either way, I don't agree with the action. The other question is this partner to, a sister to the resolution that we'll be hearing later on?
You're absolutely correct.
And I do request if you would kindly add me as a co-sponsor to this.
Of course, absolutely. Councilman Gebhardt?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to concur with all my colleagues here. often things don't happen quickly in government and in municipal government, but I think you've been very responsive to your constituents. I especially wanted to say something because I've heard from a number of folks who live over there, and they're understandably frustrated with how things are going, and any responsiveness and anything we can do to help make sure, as everyone said, that we at least are informed and can do our best to prepare neighbors and residents if there is an emergency situation and something needs to happen. At least I feel like this new administration and this new council, we do a pretty good job of trying to get communication out there and trying to involve the community in things that are happening, and when stuff happens and no one's informed, nobody knows what's happening, it's frustrating, and we all lose a little bit of trust, and this is all about building trust. So I would be more than happy if you'd have me as a co-sponsor, and I just want to say thank you for the work you've done here.
Much appreciated. And of course, you're welcome as a co-sponsor. Councilwoman Travis?
I also like to be added as a co-sponsor, Mr. Chairman.
Of course. Council President? It looks like, all right, same thing. Councilman McElroy?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And Councilman Ricks, based on the hand. Alrighty, and just so everyone's aware, we're not talking about a few neighbors got frustrated. This is what seems to be basically the whole neighborhood, surrounding businesses, and there are issues pretty much on a daily basis. I follow them with a group they've set up, and I see daily the things that occur. Fire and police going down. It would be unusual if fire and police didn't go on any given day at this point. That would be more surprising than if they did go. And that is the point in which we have hit. And Councilman Lattiser?
Mr. Chair, the more we discuss this, the more outrageous, it actually appears to be, because so what this did was it puts all of us, including the administration, it puts us in a position where we don't have an answer. We're the elected officials here in the city of Warwick. It's our job to together as a team to look out for the city, to run the city. And here we are, just without rhyme or reason, we are put in a position, all of us, the 9 members of the city council and the administration, we're put in a position where we start to get calls and we have to give an answer that, I don't know. I never heard of it. I have no idea what you're talking about. This is something that could happen with, I could sit here and think of a half a dozen items that something like this could happen. And, quite honestly, I'm really getting tired of, the excuse always being, well, it's okay because, we're doing it, this pandemic. It gives me the right to do it. I'm kind of like really, I'm all done with hearing all that stuff. You know what, it's time to turn the corner here. But again, it's just, it's a very alarming situation, I think, at best. Thank you, Chairman.
And your point's well taken as far as we're left trying to answer questions that we can't, because I know at least some of the residents were convinced that the city was in on it. We were getting kickbacks and whatnot, because how could you not know about something like this? Like, what? You're not wrong. This is ridiculous. How could we not? But we didn't.
Well, just listen to the tape from one of the previous meetings, right? We got hammered. It had nothing to do with us. It wasn't our fault. But yet nobody came down from uptown to come to that council meeting and explain the situation. We took the heat. The executive branch and the legislative branch took the heat, and we had no knowledge of it whatsoever.
And no ability to do anything about it.
Exactly, except I don't know. You know what, Mr. Chairman, we better move on, because this could continue. We could be on this topic for a long time tonight. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from members of the public? I see at least one hand up. Looks like a phone, Phil.
I apologize. I'm coming in late to the committee meeting, but I did read this ordinance. And I'm wondering if the 3% of the total project dollar amount is still involved with this version of the ordinance.
Hi, Ms. Walsh. What you're referring to is the resolution to the General Assembly, which contains proposed legislation that includes the 3%. This, what we're talking about now, is the ordinance, which doesn't go as far as the proposed legislation to the General Assembly because it would be illegal. So we're only allowed here as an ordinance to require property owners or operators to provide notice to the city when they're going to be entering an arrangement that involves, among other things, violating the Warwick zoning ordinances.
Is there any way you could add a fee for service in this particular resolution?
I'm fairly certain the answer is no, for the same reason we couldn't
So
do
just
further, because it would be frustration of contract. But Solicitor Walsh, just
to intervene here, we are unfortunately not on the resolution. That item will be before the intergovernmental committee coming up that as it follows. This is the ordinance committee, and it only pertains to the resolution regarding notice. So two separate items. We're on the first one. The second one will be coming shortly hereafter it before the other committee.
All right, sorry about that.
All right, no worries. Do any other members of the public have any questions or comments? I see Pete Souza has his hand up. Or Peter, rather.
Yes. Hi, Councilman. How are you?
Good. Good to hear from you.
Thank you. Just for the other councilmen, council people know, I was just elected as president of the Pontiac Village Association. And this issue has been brought to the forefront of the whole community. The whole community is in uproar about the contract with NILO and how it's been brought forward by the Crossroads president and their responses to try to appease the community by making these very shallow concessions. You have the paperwork in front of you, I believe, about the number of calls of police and fire. Just recently, the number of calls by the police department for the past month, I think it's been like 47 with 4 arrests over there. It's just been, like I said, a drain on city services without any repayment by the state. And we just need to do something about it.
Muted myself. It should be noted too that at the community meeting when this was first discussed, Crossroads was in attendance, and they actually accused the community of fear mongering when they brought up their concerns about the arrangement. And to the community's credit, it wasn't actually fear mongering. They were referring back to the time prior when this arrangement occurred, and it was a nightmare. And they were voicing, well, what if it happens again? What are you going to do? And after being accused of these things, everything they feared played out almost to a T. So the community, in addition to having to suffer the consequences of this arrangement, they also have been ridiculed and demonized for sharing what has been happening to them and protesting that fact. So it just adds insult to injury, to put it lightly. And are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion?
Request for
No action.
action. Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And unless I'm mistaken, I believe that is the extent of the agenda for ordinance as of 6:40 p.m.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The next committee will be the Intergovernmental Committee, and that is available to start at Chairman McElroy's pleasure.
Anthony, you staying on?
You're stuck with me.
Okay, it is now 6:40 and the Intergovernmental Committee is now in session. The first order of business is the acceptance of minutes from the committee meeting held on November 15th, 2021.
Move favorable action regarding the minutes.
Second,
I have a motion, I have a second, all in favor?
aye.
Aye. Okay, the first item on the agenda is PCR 149-21, a resolution requesting the General Assembly enact legislation providing municipal property tax relief by appropriating at least 10% of additional state gambling revenues in excess of fiscal year 2019 levels to municipalities as supplemental education aid. Councilman Foley?
Thank you. This is a resolution that's a long time coming. As a lot of people know, 20 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be the Ward 6 councilman for a brief tenure. And I was contemplating this resolution back then, but sadly 9/11 happened and that put a kibosh on a lot of things. And then the pandemic took place, and once again, a kibosh was put on this type of resolution. But the more I thought about it, two issues that interest or affect people the most: A, property taxes, and B, funding of public education. As a 40-year teacher, 30 years in the state of Rhode Island as a public school teacher, fair and equitable school funding has always been an issue. This resolution is my attempt to get a conversation going to maybe solve or at least alleviate both problems. What I'm asking is, let's not take any revenues out of the revenue source that we're relying on. It's saying let's benchmark 2019. So whatever comes from the lottery in fiscal 2019 is our benchmark. Any increase over that, at least 10% of that increase should go to property tax relief and should be earmarked for public education. I don't know how any legislator could argue against that, because we're not taking revenues that you're counting on. How can you count on an increase? But the increased money, as opposed to just going into the general fund and being dispersed, as being kind, it could be earmarked to give the town, cities and towns, the property tax people. And when I walked the ward in this campaign to be the Ward 1 city councilor, that was an issue I heard almost at every doorstop. Property taxes, that people are being taxed out of their homes. Now, we've been fortunate. Last year, we passed no tax increase. This council, as we now sit, the council before us, no tax increase. Let's hope we can do that again this year. But I don't have a crystal ball. But going forward, you cannot anticipate that ad infinitum, we're never going to have tax increases again. This would be a way to help, at least in some small part, to alleviate the burden on the property tax base. That's A. B, my last point is this. It's a misnomer or misinformation that when they started the lottery back in the 1970s, that the initial purpose was to go to property tax relief. Did my research, a great state legislator, Harold Metz, when we increased the lottery to include the quote casinos that we now have, he brought that point forward, and there was no record of that ever being actually stated anywhere. But legislator Metz tried to enact something back when they expanded the lottery, and it never went anywhere. I wanted to just make sure I gave him credit for having an idea similar to this, but he wanted all of that revenue to go toward it. I'm earmarking increase above the benchmark and only a small portion to start, and then let's increase it. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Any other comments or questions from the committee?
Only to point out this is well timed, given the upcoming reevaluation, to be all the more important.
Very good. Any other questions or comments from the council? Questions or comments from the public? Council President McAllister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Councilman Foley for bringing this forward. I think this is an excellent idea. He had spoke to me about this early on when he was elected. This is something that he wanted to do. You heard that he's done a lot of research on this, talking to a lot of people, talking to our solicitor. Here's his goal. He's trying to find property tax relief for the taxpayers of the city of Warwick and direct that money to our education system. I think that is a great goal, and I am proud that he brought this. I think this is a creative way of doing it. You know, if we went up to the State House and said we want X amount of money and take it from wherever and send it to us, it's never going to go anywhere. But this is a creative piece of legislation that he's proposing. He is saying, listen, here's a benchmark. Anything above that benchmark going forward, you haven't budgeted it yet because you don't know what that number is. So why don't you send that to the municipalities, not just the city of Warwick, to all the municipalities, and it's going to go directly for helping the taxpayers, the property taxpayers, which pays for our school systems. So I think it's an excellent plan. I really appreciate your leadership on this, Councilman Foley, and I would love to be added as a co-sponsor if you have me. Thank you. That was a thumbs up for the record there.
Thumbs up for the record, yes.
Thank
you. Councilman Ricks. Councilman Ricks.
Yeah, if I could also be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Another thumbs up.
Councilman Lattister.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Councilman Foley, do you have any a rough idea as to what that number could be in terms of the appropriation?
I gave the numbers to Solicitor Walsh, and I had numbers from, I think, 2018, 2019, and 2020, and I used the 2019 because that was sort of pre-COVID, and last year, obviously with the COVID, it dropped, but all the numbers are in the resolution, Councilman Lattiser.
So if you look to line 3536, in November this past year, the state's revenue estimating conference made its projections for the current receipts expected during this fiscal year, the current fiscal 22, and they increased their projection by 17 million to 393 million. And the point of that for the resolution is it's very close to the pre-COVID peak of 398 million. So the idea being that this would be a timely opportunity to start getting a percentage of anything above that 300, or roughly $400 million benchmark that could be used.
But we're talking about a 10% increase over the fiscal year 2019 levels.
Correct. The point of that is that the current budget projections show that we are very close to restoring to that benchmark, meaning that the future dollars that go above that benchmark would be the growth that we are requesting to be shared.
So the growth of fiscal year 2019, whatever millions of dollars that was at that time, any increase from that time to current day would be where the 10% formula would be applied to.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Sorry,
Councilman,
Solicitor Walsh.
if I could, I'd like to be added as a sponsor to this as well.
Fine. If I can, just a point of clarification also. My thought behind this is, if you saw what happened with the car tax, they tried to get that gone away with. I'm just searching for words here. And the problem was they had to find revenue to replace that. This is saying you're not going to have to go find revenue. It's an increase. So I'm just, it's the union president in me. I'm taking away objections before we go to negotiations. I can figure out what they're going to object to, and I tried to take that objection away. You don't have to go find a way to replace the revenue. It's future revenue that you can't possibly be planning.
That's good.
All set. Councilman Foley, I would also like to be added as a sponsor.
Perfect. Thank you.
Likewise.
Any other questions from the council? Councilman Travis?
Yes, I also would like to be added on. Councilman
With
Foley?
pleasure. With
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public?
Councilman Mac, Chairman, if I may.
Yes. Council.
I just want to echo what Council President and others have said in regards to this. I think this is a a good creative idea. If you look at some of the host communities where the casino properties have gone in, the revenue share off of those revenues have done great things for their school departments, as well as other parts of their municipalities. So I think this kind of follows in that same pattern, and especially with sports books coming online and the expansion of other gaming programs, this definitely sounds good. Hopefully we can get some movement on it. Feels like the kind of thing we should all be behind. So I am more than happy to sign on as a co-sponsor if you'd have me.
With pleasure, sir.
Anyone else from the council?
Council, Chairman,
Yes, Councilman.
I'm so sorry. I meant to jump on earlier, but I was having a little bit of technical difficulty. I'd like to be, with the permission of the sponsor, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, with pleasure. I'd just like to say, I'm very moved by the entire council wanting to be added on. I really appreciate the support, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
I move favorable action.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 The second item on the agenda is PCR 13-22, a resolution requesting the General Assembly enact legislation requiring municipal notice and opportunity to join as a third-party beneficiary to contracts between the state and property owners or operators that use a property in violation of municipal zoning. Councilman Sinapi.
So as was correctly noted by a few of you, this is related to the proposed ordinance. The difference being that because we're asking the General Assembly to do something, the reach can be a little bit further. So rather than just provide notice, we also can request for a percentage of the value of the contract. That way we can help offset the city services that are shifted, and also so that we can kind of lessen the impact to the community as a whole. I would have preferred further, just like with the ordinance, but again, we less have to worry about unlawful and more have to worry about ability to pass. So the solicitor felt this gave us better odds to pass by being the way it is. And I'm more concerned with getting something in there than getting the best possible thing, especially if the best possible thing isn't going to work at the General Assembly level. I do like our odds, given that this helps every community, not just us. This isn't an ordinance, or rather a proposed law that only benefits Warwick. This will benefit everybody. So I'm hoping that the General Assembly will be keen on that fact, considering they represent their municipalities.
Okay. Any questions from the committee?
Yes, Councilman Sinapi, could I be added on as a co-sponsor, please?
Of course.
Any other, Council President McAllister?
Thank you. Again, I just want to thank Councilman Sinapi for his due diligence on this. Again, he's taking every step that he can. And we are limited in what we can do, but he's working it from multiple angles. And I just want to commend him for this. And I support this legislation and would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Okay. Councilman Lattiser?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor if possible as well. Thank you.
Councilwoman Travis?
I also like to be added on it. I think Councilman Sinapi is crossing all his T's and dotting his I's to try to get this from every angle, and I definitely support it fully. Thank you.
I would also like to be added as a sponsor. Any other questions or comments from the council? Councilman Gebhardt?
Yeah, I'd like to be added as a sponsor. And I think, especially on this one, another action that each of us can take is, obviously we all have different representatives in that cover our different wards. And I think this is a good opportunity to reach out to them beyond just this resolution, but also to place a phone call and remind them of the importance of this. And, they're not always as tied into the day-to-day issues impacting inside the city and, in municipal departments and the impact it has. They'll certainly hear it when they start walking around, especially in the neighborhood over there. Because as I said, I mean, it's not my area, but I've had several calls from folks that live over that way. So just another thing that we can do, we can all co-sponsor this. A good show of solidarity is helpful, but I think picking up the phone and contacting the representative in your area is another, possibly even more meaningful way to apply some pressure on this to help, both Ward 8, but also the city as a whole. So thank you all. And if I didn't say it before, I would definitely like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the council?
Chairman, if I may, I'd also like to be added as a co-sponsor. I think that it does send a powerful message when the General Assembly sees that not only does presumably, considering the content of the discussion here, this matter be passed by unanimous vote, but also that all 9 of us sign our names to it as co-sponsors in support. And I think that Councilman Gebhardt said it well too, that we need to not just sign our names, but also make those phone calls to see what we can all do to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Hey, we actually have one hand raised.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Raul Palacios. I'm a neighbor here at the Nilo, and I'd like to speak a little bit. I originally moved here from out of state, and my fiance and I, we looked at places from Providence all the way to EG, and we ended up moving to the Pontiac Mills, and we really liked our home, and it's been madness for over the last month. We have all these different characters walking around day and night. They stockpile shopping carts out on the street. Our building has to have security 24 hours a day. A bunch of people are they stand outside smoking cigarettes. I'm a family guy. I have a son also. And I have concerns for my family with, this is a neighborhood community. So like, I'm not against doing public service and having people like that having social services, but this isn't the place for it. And I thought it was crazy how a hotel would just try to stick this under the nose of the neighbors and the public and just force all these neighbors just to have to live with this. It's I think it's absurd, and I've never seen anything like it. So that's pretty much what I have to say.
Thank you very much. I just want to let you know, we are addressing the situation as best we can, and you have the best advocate you could have in the city in Councilman Anthony Sinapi. So he is a big advocate on your behalf. Are there any other questions or comments from the public?
Thank you.
I have something quick, Councilman McElroy.
Yes, Councilman Sinapi.
I didn't mention this during the ordinance discussion because it wasn't pertinent, but part of the reason why we are requesting to be a signatory for when these things happen, when these arrangements are proposed, is twofold. One, so that there's a breach of the contract, we actually have the right and ability to enforce without having to have any of the obligations of the contract. So, because already right now, arguably breaches may have occurred, but we can't do anything except watch. And also because, let's say the state came in and said, hey, we're going to do such and such at this location. You want to be a signatory to the contract, or third-party beneficiary rather, we could actually have some input and say, well, yes, if you have it there, but just so you know, there's actually better locations here, here, and here. Something that they actually have a conversation about it rather than that ham-handed approach where they just pick a spot that they think is good based on where they're looking from, kind of the macro in the sky view, as opposed to us. We're actually in the city and have more in-depth awareness of what's going on and what would be appropriate. So again, this is an example of something that'll actually help the state and help those that are utilizing these services. It won't just benefit Warwick or any other municipality.
You're on mute, Councilman McElroy.
All set, Councilman?
Yep.
All right, do I hear any comments from the public? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Favorable action. Seconded.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I believe that ends the intergovernmental committee at 7:03 p.m.
Thank you very much, Chairman McElroy. I'm just going to give the solicitor and the clerk a minute to get ready, and then we're going to call the full city council meeting to order. All right, good evening, everyone. I call the January 19th, 2022 City Council meeting to order. Tonight, we are virtual. So please, if you're hearing my voice now, you can log on. You can go on to the City Council website at warwickri.gov, select the City Council, and you can see the options to join us this evening on Zoom. The options are available there. You can click the link to join the webinar. You can also call. There are multiple numbers to call on there. All this information is on our website and it's on the agenda. So go on to the City Council January 19th, 2022 agenda, and you will find the information to join us via Zoom this evening. At this time, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. McAllister,
Here.
Mr. Foley,
Here.
Mr. Gephardt,
Here.
Mr. Howe,
Here.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yeah.
Mr. McElroy,
Yeah.
Mr. Ricks,
Here.
Mr. Sinapi,
Here.
Miss Travis.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'm going to ask Councilman Howe to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Our guest this evening, it was going to be one of our speakers, is not feeling well, so we're going to have him come back at another time. So if Councilman Howe can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we will have the national anthem play after.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And I just want to make special mention to our MIS staff, Phil and Chris, for taking care of this for us. This was an adjustment. We were back in person. Now we're back on Zoom. This is as a result of the executive order from the governor's office. No decision has been made for the February meetings, so stay tuned for that. But thank you to our great staff who's making sure that everyone can participate in the meeting this evening. Unless there's some objection, I would like to do general communications before we start with our executive communications. Is there any objections to doing general communications at this time from the council? Okay, hearing none, I have a few. First, I would just like to congratulate Congressman Langevin and thank him for his service to our city, our state, and our country. He served many years, over 30 years as an elected official, 20 years in Congress. And I work with members of Congress every day. That is a tough job and it's only getting tougher. So I just want to thank the congressman, a Warwick resident. So we're always proud when people from Warwick go on and do big things. And I know he's looking forward to coming back to the state and hopefully the city. And won't be the last that we've heard from the congressman, but I just wanted to take a minute and thank him for his great service to our city. I also want to welcome our new fire class. On Friday, we sworn in over 20 new firefighters, men and women are joining the best fire department in the state. So we are proud to have them here. It's the first class that we've had in over 6 years. So I think it's always good to bring on some new blood, get some young people out there, so you'll see some new faces in our community, and we're proud to have them. And I wish them nothing but health and happiness. And thank you, not just to the new firefighters, but all of our fire and police and people that they're serving the public every single day. So congratulations to the new fire class. And finally, I just wanted to touch on a big project that happens to be in Ward 7 in Apponaug that the mayor announced, and I was proud to be a part of that. we're not at City Hall tonight, but if we looked out the window, that building, the annex building, is no longer there. And the mayor has a grand plan of building a new ice rink there. But it's also going to be open space. We're going to have lots of different projects. I'm thrilled. I've been working with the Apponaug Village Association for years. We're always looking to turn Apponaug into that village community. We'd love to have it like East Greenwich and Wickford. And this is a big, big start. So this is not just going to be an outdoor ice rink where we use a couple months out of the year. This is going to be a year-round facility where members of the public can bring their families. It's going to be a fun and safe place. Again, you're going to have your skating, but there's also going to be concerts there, food trucks, roller skating, dances, volleyball, pickleball, bumper cars, all are going to go along with this beautiful area. We're going to do a lot of landscaping. We're already putting a brand new playground, which this city council voted for early last year, behind the ball field. So there'll be a beautiful playground to go along with that. It's going to be a new center for the city, and I'm really excited. So more of this to come. This will come. Different parts may come before the city council, but please reach out to your council members with any more ideas or concerns or questions. But we're excited about this project, and I look forward to seeing it start and seeing it complete. So that's all I have. It looks like we have a few council members that have something for general communications. Councilman Gephardt.
Thank you, Council President. I want to echo your sentiments for Congressman Langevin. We're certainly owe him a debt of gratitude for his service. I wanted to make one other announcement that you may have seen in the Beacon. The Warwick Land Trust is holding some community meetings about the potential for future investment in open space. The first meeting is this coming Monday at the Warwick Public Library at 6 p.m. That'll also be on Zoom as our meeting here tonight is. So just want to give a plug for that and just say thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. And thank you to Congressman Langevin for his service. And thank you to the 23 new firefighters who were sworn in. And congratulations to them as well. My announcement is that the Tax Relief Commission, consistent with the enabling legislation passed by the City Council, is going to be resuming meetings shortly. I would intend as chair to hold a couple of meetings in each month of February, March, and April as necessary. Generally, those meetings would be on the week opposite the City Council meetings on that same day. That is, as scheduling will allow with the slots that are available for the Zoom meetings through the city, as well as making sure that we try to avoid conflicts with scheduling with, say, the planning board, zoning board, and the like. We may also, especially if there is availability, and especially if the COVID-19 situation improves, try to have some public meetings in person at venues such as the library. And in those situations, see if we can have it, say, on a weekend, as opposed to having the meetings all be on the Monday nights opposite the City Council meetings. So I wanted to make that general announcement here as well, so that if any member of the council or other appointee to that Tax Relief Commission has scheduling conflicts or notices something where there may be a scheduling conflict for a major event in Warwick, please reach out to me so that we can try to make sure that these meetings are happening at the times that are most convenient for the members of the public, first and foremost, but also so that we can get sufficient attendance from the members and designees of the commission so that we may have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ricks. At this time, I just want to give a quick update on where we are on the agenda. We are moving back to executive communications. So for those that are following from home, we are going to have Peter Schaefer, the city finance director, is going to give us a report on the city finances. Our second guest, unfortunately, is under the weather, so he will not be able to join us. So then we will go right to the Warwick School Committee and the Warwick School Department for their presentation. So first, Peter Schaefer is going to talk about the city finances, and then the school department is going to give us some options how to spend those finances. So, Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I did this last year in January, mid-year update on where we are. And we've really been working on this since the end of the first quarter, end of September, and making updates as we go along. My one caution is most of this was completed before we had the onset of is it the third wave or the fourth wave? I don't remember, but it's too bad. And I don't see anything right now that really changes that. And when we come out with the budget in the May, we'll have an updated figure as to what our estimates are for the current year operations. But in general, the projections are very favorable. And this assumes some things like energy costs other than electricity increasing 50% from the baseline. You know what's happened to fuel prices. Fortunately, we have a locked in electrical rate through December 31st, 2022. So that has not affected us. But looking at revenues, good reports from the assessor and the collector. Neil believes that the abatement amount that was budgeted, we're not going to get even close to that. So we're looking at some enhancement over what we estimated on property taxes. We have one loss on state aid relating to motor vehicle reimbursements. And if you see the speaker around, you can talk to him about it. I'd like to have a discussion with him about it. But it's a complicated technical formula, and right now it looks like we're not going to get what we estimated in that area. But other areas have improved. The licenses and fees, and because we were coming out of the pandemic, have improved. Appeared to be improving from the baseline. This is the area where I'm most cautious because of the fourth wave here. But those are the positives, so that it really looks like we're close to $2 million over on revenue in our estimate. The real surprise has been on our expenses, which despite some unforeseen things like having to buy those true sanitation trucks, we see really our personnel expenses lower than expected, and part of it is a very conservative decision-making process by the mayor in terms of filling positions, but also difficult to recruit. We haven't been able to get the police officers that I know that the chief would like to get. So it's been a tough recruiting period in this environment. And that's also affected employee benefits. Our health benefits are running well below what was expected, which was a 5% per unit cost reduction from adoption of the trust's health insurance plan. But we're monitoring that pretty carefully. And it appears that we're going to have a pretty significant surplus there. So the bottom line is we had a budget, including schools, of $333 million of expenses. We think it's going to be a little under $327 million. That assumes that the school department is all right. And they've got some late federal aid. We have a new school business manager there, just been there a month, who seems to be on top of things. So I'm right now, I'm comfortable we're all there. We're going to be meeting in the next couple of weeks to go over that in more detail. So when we passed the budget, the 22 budget, we assumed we were going to use $5.5 million in ARPA funds. We assumed we were going to have to use $5.9 million in fund balance. And it appears now, based upon our projections, that we won't have to draw on fund balance, and it will only be about half the amount we will have to use of ARPA funds to support some of our operating costs, and which we qualified for based upon revenue loss classification. So, and that's summarized on the third page of the table, that we expect a good year in 22. We're starting to work on 23. What all happens there? We still have reserved a lot of ARPA funds, which I know the mayor wants to pledge to infrastructure. There's some flexibility on some other things, and you'll have that presentation in May, and it may be that the council, I know that the mayor wants the council involved in this, and you may have something earlier to public hearings or whatever on the different options for in your neighborhoods for use of ARPA funds. It's my interpretation of the charter, and I've discussed this with the solicitor, and you can certainly talk to Billy about it. That really there are some places that are going through separate ordinances to obligate their ARPA funds. And my reading of the charter is they really have to do it through the normal budget process, unless it's an emergency item. And, you know, long-term pledges for infrastructure or really don't meet the emergency test. And I think it's been infrequently used, but if there was some crisis associated with the pandemic that we need to act on immediately, I believe we could use that provision. But it's the thrust of what we're working on now is trying to incorporate the ideas that the mayor has, the ideas that the council has, into the total budget package for utilization. Remember, we've got 39.4 million entitlement and ARPA funds. We pledged 10 million to sewer and water. We've even spent some of the sewer money on the Bayside project. I think the water department's going to come to you with a contract very soon for the water main near Route 37. Phil and Brad Connor are working on different issues with regards to the broadband initiative. So those things are underway, and we're looking at other things that are priorities of the city to pledge those funds to. The second thing I want to talk about, and you're probably going to ask me why I'm doing this, but you've got a package. The state is after us on this. And Governor Raimondo had an initiative a few years ago called the Transparency Portal, the Municipal Transparency Portal. And all communities were required to report their financial information on a consistent and comparable basis. And the state really encouraged us also to prepare our budgets on that same basis. We are one of two cities that hasn't, on the budgetary basis, approved budget, has not complied with that. Most places, your neighbors in Cranston, Providence, Pawtucket, Newport, I'm not sure what others, East Providence, allocate all their employee benefits to each department. So if you look at the fire department or the building code commission, all the employee benefits associated with the employees assigned there are in that department. We're one of two cities, and I haven't looked at all the Exeters of the world, but of the city, we're just Warwick and Woonsocket still do not allocate the benefits. So you can't really, if you wanted to pick up the Cranston budget and compare the building department in Warwick with Cranston, difficult to do. Although what we do for financial reporting purposes, Lynn, the treasurer, and Jason, the controller, have a method for allocating those costs in our financial report. But the budget that you all see is not done that way. And I've had discussions with the council president, the mayor, the chairman of the finance committee about possibly switching. I see both sides of this, and I don't see any high priority for it. But it would be helpful for me to say to the state, my city doesn't have appetite for this. We like it the way it is. So, but I would change it if anyone wanted to. If any councilman wants to docket something to require a change, I don't think the mayor would object. I wouldn't object. The first year you do it is going to be a problem because you're going to have to restate the prior year. It's when errors happen. And I really think we've got such a focus this next year on what's happened with our pensions, which has been great in terms of the funding levels. What we want to do, as I talked earlier in the Finance Committee on OPEB, the savings that we've got on health benefits, I think it's helpful to look at those things in an isolated way, which gets lost when you spread it around, if you spread all the costs to each of the departments. So right now, I'm not trying to make any plan. I welcome anyone who wants to talk to me about it or docket something to do it the other way. But right now, I say we'll stick with Woonsocket and do it the way we've been doing it now. I'm ready to change if you want to. I hope you'll look through the package that I sent you. I know it's a lot of pages, and you can look. There's one column that shows the budget we approved, say for the building department. And then the next column to the right is what it would have been if we allocated all the employee benefit costs. Now, I know I don't see Jason, the deputy chief from the fire department here. I know he would love it if we made this switch, because when we have a lot of overtime in the fire department, it looks worse than it really is, because it means that we were understaffed in terms of filling people in regular time. And we're getting a lot of savings in health benefits in those departments when you're short-staffed, but you don't see that because we don't allocate the benefits. So I see both sides of this, but right now, I don't plan to make a change that the mayor doesn't see it as a priority, but I'm happy to listen to you on it. And I do hope you'll look through the package I sent you and you'll get a feel for what the difference would be. The third thing, and we've covered most of this, you've already approved the resolution, or it's on the docket for the Finance Committee has approved the resolution authorizing participation with the Rhode Island Local Trust. I told you, and I will be back to you in the first meeting in February, for a change in pension actuaries to do our OPEB calculation and to help us work with coming up a plan that merges our liabilities relating to pensions, which we had such extraordinary investment performance that we now have the 3 active plans, all at 89.5% funded or higher. One's at 93, another's at 98%. It's only the old police and fire, which has a declining beneficiary. So I think we've got this opportunity to use some of the resources that have been pledged toward pension while still making our annual required contribution. That's not an issue, but freeing up a little wiggle room to try to start addressing OPEB. The last thing I just want to mention, I was hoping to say to you, click on the finance page of your website and you can see the 21 audit. I can't say that. I talked to and it's really, the numbers I gave you in October are really essentially unchanged. It's just some little things really relating to state reporting, and especially the school district and some federal funds. But the audit manager of our firm, we talked with her today, and she was comfortable in my telling you that the certified statements will be available next week. So we're real close. Let me just refresh your memory on where we are. Budgetary operating surplus of $3.8 million. The general fund balance is increased by 2.8 million, and it's or 9.2%. The unassigned general fund balance is $26.6 million, which is 8.2% of fiscal year budgeted expenditures. We were over budget on year-end revenues. We were way over budget on property taxes, really, thanks to the tax sale at the end of the year, which was sometimes a lot of people didn't want to go down that path, but it was important. Obviously, we're still under budget from what was originally approved a year and a half ago in the hospitality associated revenues, but other things like the building permit fees, real estate transfer taxes, and the like made up for it even more than we thought when we passed the budget in May. So those are the main things I wanted to talk about, and you will have, and I'll make sure that Joanne gets you the link to the certified financial statements when they're ready, almost certainly next week.
Thank you very much, Director. And I just, again, want to flag this, that this is something that this council and this administration has done. And again, I've been on the council 5 years, and we've never done it until this council and this administration is having the finance director come up to us and give us updates on snapshots, where we're at during the budget process, not just waiting once a year when we pass a budget. So I thank you for providing this information. If any city council members or any members of the public have any questions, they can reach out to the mayor's office with that, or reach out to your council person with any specific questions, and we will get that information for you. So I thank you very much, Director, for your time. Up next, again, I had mentioned we were going to have someone from CCAP give us a presentation. Unfortunately, he is not feeling well this evening, so he's unable to join us, but we will have him back at another time. So at this time, I would like to introduce for a presentation by the Warwick School Committee and the Warwick School Department regarding school construction. So just for everyone's information here, is that this is going to be a presentation from the Warwick School Department on a proposal that they will be coming to the City Council for. So this is just informational only, just like the information received from Mr. Schaefer. If any council people or members of the public have any questions after the presentation, they can reach out to the school administration after the meeting for that information. So I don't know, I know the superintendent is on. I see that the chairwoman of the school committee is on. I want to thank you all for joining us virtually. But whoever would like to kick it off, I yield the floor.
Good evening, Chairman and City Council. We have our presentation that has been presented to some of the community that via our YouTube meeting and in person. And we know that we'd like to share it with you now. It's from Secotio, and they are our architects on the new school buildings. And we understand we're having a meeting in February on this. So, we'd like you guys to watch it and to marinate for a while for that meeting and come up with questions so we can work together cohesively on this and hopefully get this on the ballot. So at this point, I'd like to introduce the Secotio firm.
Hi, it's Mark Secotio from Secotio Associates. We're here with our partners from SOM Architects, Katie, who's been our resident presenter, will be walking you through the model school. So the whole concept of what we've been doing is basically doing a model school. So a typical school that would be modified slightly for each of the two sites, being Pilgrim and Tollgate. So we'll walk you through the model concept school, and then we'll show each of the different site plans for the two different sites. And as you had said, this is an introductory first run through for this. And we look forward to our meeting. I think it's on the 7th of February. So I will turn it over to Katie.
Awesome, thank you. Okay. So if you can all see my screen, hopefully you can see the cover page. Okay. On behalf of the team listed here who are responsible for the development of the design, we wanted to thank you for the opportunity to present the Warwick Comprehensive Model High School project tonight. Through our presentation, we will review the following items, starting with the adjacency diagram developed during visioning. Next, the model school concept diagram showing the organization from which both Pilgrim and Tollgate High Schools originated. We'll show you the proposed site plans for the Pilgrim and Tollgate sites, as well as the overall floor plan diagrams. The visual permeability diagrams show the design's clear sight lines, which enhance views to the outdoors and security of the building. Next, we will look at a series of diagrams showing how the building's designed with safety and security in mind, as well as the community event usage of the buildings. Finally, we've illustrated both the interior and the exterior with a series of perspective views, as well as an animation video to walk you through the model high school. So this is the adjacency bubble diagram developed by our educational planning consultant together with the schools at the visioning sessions in the spring of 2019. With the 21st century learning approach, decentralized departments and groupings of different classroom types form small learning community clusters like you see here. Traditional learning areas are integrated with flexible extended learning areas, administrative spaces, teacher planning centers, and support spaces. Because we are creating two comprehensive high schools, the small learning communities also integrate career tech classrooms or CTC programming. The public versus the student use spaces are defined and zoned for safety and security. As another reminder, this is the original concept diagram we first presented at our meeting with RIDE in August. This matrix here outlines the comments made by RIDE at this meeting, which included coherent wayfinding, optimal building orientation, equity and identity, programmable circulation, and a superior school culture. Throughout stage 2, we've been actively working to refine the original concept diagram into a project that further responds to RIDE's comments. In doing so, we presented this list of corresponding design considerations to RIDE in November, which outline the major goals of the project. And those include the economy of structure, space, materials, and an equitable model school approach, environmental design, including sustainability, clarity of circulation through planning, adaptability and flexibility.
Kicked off the meeting, which she shouldn't have.
With future change, sorry. Thank you. Clarity of circulation through planning, adaptability and flexibility with future change in mind, and the building experience through visual permeability. The development of a model school has been adapted to both site locations. At Pilgrim, we've cited the new building to the east, which borders the adjacent commercial context. As a reference, you can see the demolished existing school building outline dashed in red. The parking is set back from Pilgrim Parkway, establishing a generous landscape buffer between the residential neighborhood, as well as serving as a bioretention zone and acoustical barrier. The vehicular traffic plan is designed for peak high volume traffic with maximum flexibility and adaptability for current, future, and occasional traffic patterns. Parallel bus and car drop-off lanes and 3 drop-off locations at the 3 building entrances reduce pedestrian travel distances and disembarkation time. The stadium and sports fields are linked to the gymnasium entrance to the west of the site, and all sports fields are oriented optimally relative to the sun path. At Tollgate, the building is mirrored and placed on the higher elevation. while the stadium is placed at the lower elevation of the site. The existing restaurant building will be reused as both CTC and athletic support spaces. We have developed a 2-story building, and here we are showing the overall first floor plan diagram. As Mark explained, Pilgrim is being used to illustrate the model high school. So aside from mirroring the building, variations in the tollgate plans mainly include the differing CTC programs. The model school building is organized around this central spine we are calling the boulevard. Serving as circulation space as well as occupied by the learning and dining commons, we see the boulevard as an active public space with visual and physical connections to adjacent programs and the outdoors. There are 3 small learning communities on the first floor to the east and the gymnasium and auditorium to the west. You'll see the colorful composition of the small learning communities that is reminiscent of the early visioning bubble diagram, bringing together different departments. The light blue extended learning areas are multi-purpose collaborative learning spaces open to all departments, which encourage additional cross-curricular engagement between classrooms. There are 3 more small learning communities on the second floor, as well as additional programming at the gymnasium. The classrooms are oriented to the ideal north-south building orientation, maximizing the quality of light for learning. As a model school designed with adaptability and flexibility in mind, the academic wings can expand or contract as needed to accommodate the differing CTC offerings at the 2 high schools. These plan diagrams have been formed based on the RIDE dictated quantities and allowances, as well as user input. During planning and for coordination with the users, the learning space capacity information layered here identifies the type of learning space by its student capacity and tallies the maximum quantity of students that can be housed in all the learning spaces at one time. These diagrams explore the extent to which the building is designed with visual permeability in mind. We have identified visual permeability as the clear sight lines from the indoors to the outdoors, labeled external, as well as from one indoor space to another, labeled internal. In addition to the windows along the perimeter, the green arrows show the direct or indirect visual connection of the indoors with the outdoors, allowing access to natural daylighting and views of the sky, clouds, and trees is an experience called biophilia, which when exposed to supports the mental health, productivity, and social emotional learning of building occupants. The blue arrows demonstrate where the safety and security from staff and faculty occupied spaces overlooking student and public spaces is maximized. With straight sight lines, we are designing with clarity of wayfinding to enhance safety and to deter bullying. Additionally, the blue circles show where there are vertical visual connections from one floor to the other. Along with in-depth security coordination, the next 2 diagrams illustrate how we've planned for safe areas in the building through function and materials. Here on level 1, for example, areas of shelter are provided in the public spaces of the learning and dining commons of the boulevard. On both levels, you can see the shadow zones highlighted within the classrooms where groups of students are protected from activity outside the classrooms. By nature of the material, the masonry egress stairs also act as areas of refuge. We are studying ways that these safe zones can be integrated into the interior design as safety wayfinding, perhaps by assigning a certain safe color to walls and floors that double as areas of refuge. We expect the comprehensive schools to house community events as well. This next series of diagrams show how different zones in the building can be used while the others are securely closed off. This diagram shows the areas that are accessible during an event in the gymnasium, namely the public portions of the boulevard, the public toilets, and the gymnasium areas, while the secure access points are circled in red. For second floor gymnasium use, there is direct access from the gym entrance to the walking track stairs. Outside of event use, the walking track stairs is a strong community asset that can be used locally beyond the student population. For an event in the Boulevard, there are similar secure access points at the small learning communities and the egress stair doors which would typically remain open during the school day. Similarly, while typically open, a roll down shutter provides security of the gymnasium from an event in the Boulevard, while still providing access to the centrally located public toilets. For an event in the auditorium, there are similar security measures as mentioned previously, as well as additional access to public toilets provided in the main entrance lobby. This is an aerial view of the building from the southeast. The 3 volumes to the east are the academic wings, housing the 6 small learning communities. The gymnasium volume to the west relates to the sports fields beyond. The auditorium is also to the west, defining a prominent corner of the building. And connected to the main entrance, the boulevard runs through the middle, linking the programs on the east and the west. We have focused on the economy of materials for efficiency and panelization of the facade. The first floor is composed of large format masonry as the base with punched windows. The second floor is composed of a rain screen system with segments of glass, photovoltaics, metal, and fiber cement panels. The entry to the new school is clearly defined by the intersection of 3 basic massing elements: the first floor base, the second story facade, and the auditorium. The geometric composition of the 3 building masses creates a well-protected entrance, eliminating the need for costly architectural components such as a canopy. The composition of materials further defines the entrance, clearly signaling where to enter from all angles of approach. We've coordinated the facade modules with the structural grid of the building for flexibility and adaptability. We regulated the floor-to-floor heights at 14 feet throughout so that a CTC classroom can be swapped with a general classroom space, for example, without interrupting the overall design or the facade. PV panels have a 25 to 30-year warranty, and with the removal of 6 machine screws can easily be repaired or replaced. While they're integrated within several small learning communities, we are showing ways of connecting programs like art, CTC, science, and other core academics. In this exterior perspective, you can see the use of the courtyard space between small learning communities for outdoor cross-curricular engagement. The 720-seat auditorium provides space for both music and theater productions. It is simple, accessible, and also functions as a teaching space. It uses wood, glass, and masonry materials for their biophilic and acoustic properties. Visibility to the gymnasium is shown in this perspective view from the boulevard through the Hall of Fame entrance and into the gymnasium. Decentralized administrative conference rooms are accessible from the public zone of the dining commons and can serve as flexible meeting spaces with an example of additional administrative oversight to the boulevard. Like the dining commons, the learning commons are located within the boulevard with visibility to and through it. We have zoned the learning commons so that it is accessible and visible, but also contained by way of glass partitions and book stacks. The learning stair not only connects activities from the first to the second floor, but also serves as programmable circulation space. It is an extension of the more public side of the learning commons where students gather and move. This perspective view shows the visual permeability between the learning commons and the extended learning areas on both floors of the boulevard to the outdoor learning and the exterior. This perspective view of the second floor boulevard overlooking the learning commons on the first floor. As an extension of the boulevard circulation, the clearly zoned extended learning areas also have direct connections to the exterior. Revealing the structure and exposing the makeup of its materials, we believe the building itself can serve as an object from which to learn. This interior perspective shows the concept of permeability with both exterior visibility to the outdoors and interior visibility through observational adjacencies of the level 2 programming. 2 sides of bleachers serving 1,316 seats flank the double height volume of the gymnasium. The gymnasium's double height volume not only allows for a walking track, but also a rock climbing wall extending vertically. There is direct visual and physical access to the outdoor fitness and sports fields beyond this indoor fitness area. While activating this area, the glass also brings natural daylighting into some of the more internal gym program spaces. This final perspective view demonstrates the experience of passing through or occupying the Science Conservatory Bridge. While science classrooms are no longer departmentalized and are spread amongst different small learning communities, the conservatory acts as another way to connect small learning communities via educational programming and biophilia. We've prepared an animation for you to walk you through more of Warwick's comprehensive model high school. Thank you. I'm just going to switch my screen. So you all can see that.
Great, thank you very much. Anything that the superintendent or the school committee chair would like to add?
I would just like to say thank you for giving us the time today to show that to you. And like I said before, please marinate on that. I think it's pretty exciting. I'm sure when you were watching it, everybody's mouth was dropping a little bit, going, wow. There is a wow factor to it, but it's very much needed. And we look forward to meeting with you in a few weeks in February and discussing it.
Council
And
President
thank you,
McAllister.
Shakopio, for your
Council President McAllister, I'd also like to add that, this is the time. We have tired old high schools. We will be getting approximately 52% reimbursement on our investment in new high schools. And to go with 21st century teaching and learning, an old building is just not working. We need those collaborative spaces. We need what you saw today with the design. So I hope you support this project.
All right. Well, I thank you very much for presenting today. Again, for my colleagues and for the public, this was a presentation only. We will be coming back to discuss, and that was the fun part. Get to see what we could do. Next time we're going to be talking how we're going to pay for it. What's the cost going to be? And as soon as we get those numbers from the school department, the finance director is going to put a presentation together. So once we get all that information, we will be discussing that in detail here at the city council, where members of the city council can ask questions, members of the public can ask questions, and our friends from the school department will be there, and the administration as well. So I just wanted to give a little procedure here. So I thank everyone for participating. It was a great presentation, and give some time to absorb all that, and we will be talking soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you again, Mr. President and the council.
Thank you. Everybody stay safe and have a great day.
Thank you.
Next up on the city council, we have now completed the executive communications. We have already done general communications. So we are moving on to number 1, which is appointments requiring confirmation. There are none. So now we're going to move to the acceptance of the minutes from the council meeting held on January 3rd, 2022. For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Gephardt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any objections? Okay, the minutes have been accepted. Next up this evening is public comments. Rule 41. After the general communications and prior to the consent calendar at each city council public hearing meeting, there shall be a 15-minute period during which citizens may comment about Warwick City government issues subject to the following stipulations. The total period of time for public comment shall be 15 minutes. Comments need to be brief in order to allow as many citizens as possible to participate. The topics for comment shall be issues directly affecting city government. City council members will not respond to questions during public comment period. The public comment session will terminate at the expiration of 15 minutes. Waiver of this provision requires unanimous consent. So we are on Zoom here. So we want to open it up. This is the time for public comment. If there are any members of the public that would like to speak on City of Warwick issues, please raise your hand. All right, we have one. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak? We have one that's a phone number. We'll let them in a second. I just want to give everyone else a shot. Okay, if we can let the caller in, the last 8281.
Hi, folks. Barbara Walsh. I just wanted to say it's so nice being back saying hello via Zoom access. And I am hoping you might consider using some of the undesignated APA funds to continue Zoom access to many more of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move, there are no more public comments, no more hands raised, so we will now move, excuse me one second here, to the consent calendar. First up is PCR 14-22, resolution relative to bids. Committee report, finance.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action on PCR 1422.
Second by Councilman Foley, Councilman Gephardt, Councilman Lattiser. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bid 2022-299, structural assessment for Venturi Avenue Police radio sites. Bid 2022-196, survey work police radio sites. Bid 2022-142, purchase taser CEW and associated equipment. Bid 2022-279, emergency equipment repair for police vehicles. Bid 2022-290, Shanix camera replacement. Bid 2016-268, internet-based system for police application and recruitment management. And bid 2022-264, food products. Bid 2022-171, 5-year rate study.
Thank you very much, Chairman Howe. Are there any questions on the consent calendar that were not asked earlier this evening during the Finance Committee meeting? Okay, hearing none, I believe that is it on the consent calendar. So the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
9 yes, consent passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councilman Howe. Next up on the agenda, we move to unfinished business. First up is PCR 157-21, committee report, finance.
Favorable action with amendment.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action with amendments.
Second by Councilman Gephardt. Go ahead, Councilman, if you want to lay out the amendments.
Mr. President, I respectfully go to the solicitor, Mr. Walsh.
As would I. Solicitor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. President and Chairman. The committee recommended one package of amendments. It has 4 parts, and then I'll read in total. On page 2, line 9, we're inserting the word, after the word plan, we are inserting the word trust. On page 2, line 9, we are deleting the date of December 20th, 2021, and inserting in its place the date of January 19th, 2022. On page 2, line 16, we are inserting the number 1 before the number 6 so as to make the statutory reference be 45-15-16. And on page 2, line 16, we are removing the ing at the end of the word indemnifying in order to make it read indemnify.
Thank you very much, Solicitor Walsh.
Someone move and second that amendment in total, and we're all set to go.
Okay. Do we have a motion to move that amendment?
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley. Any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll on the amendment.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley, Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
9 yes to amend.
Thank you. The amendment passes. Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action as amended.
Second by Councilman Foley, Councilwoman Travis. Any questions on the motion as amended? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
9 yes as amended.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes as amended. Next up is PCR 6-22, Committee Report, Finance.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley. Go ahead, Councilman Howe.
This was presented in committee and unanimously sent to this body for favorable action.
Correct. Are there any questions from members of the council that they did not be asked earlier this evening in committee? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
yes,
9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you. The motion passes. Number 3 this evening is PCR 7-22, committee report, finance.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley, Councilman Gephardt. Go ahead, Councilman. I believe this was also discussed and recommended for favorable action in committee.
Unanimously, yes, Mr.
Okay. Any questions that were not asked earlier this evening in the finance committee? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
yes,
9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes. Number 4 this evening, PCR 8-22, committee report, Councilman Howe.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley and Councilman Gephardt. Again, this was part of the same package that was discussed during committee earlier this evening. Councilman Howe, do you have anything to add?
Unanimously sent by the committee. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this PCR that were not asked during committee earlier this evening? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
yes,
Yes, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Number 6 this evening is PCR 10-22, committee report, finance.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley and Councilman Gephardt. Any questions that were not asked earlier this evening in the Finance Committee? Hearing none, seeing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
yes,
9 yes. 9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you. The motion passes. Next up, we're moving to new business. First up is PCO 1-22, committee report ordinance.
committee recommends favorable action.
For action, Councilman Sinapi.
I move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Howe, Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Lattiser, Councilman Foley. Any questions? There has been a number of people that have signed on as a co-sponsor, I believe, the full council. So I just want to make note of that as well. Are there any questions or comments that were not brought up during the committee earlier this evening? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
yes,
9 yes, first passage.
Thank you for first passage and congratulations, Councilman Sinapi. I know you worked hard on that. Next up is PCR 149-21, committee report,
Move favorable action on PCR 149-21.
Second by Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Howe. Also, I'd like to make a note that the full council is also asked to be co-sponsors on this legislation as well. So thank you, Councilman Foley. Any questions or comments on PCR 149-21 that were not made earlier this evening in committee? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
yes,
Mr. Riggs,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
yes,
9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you. The motion passes and congratulations, Councilman Foley. This is a very creative and beneficial piece of legislation. So thank you for allowing all of us to be a part of it. Next up is PCR 13-22, committee report, intergovernmental.
favorable action,
For action, Councilman Sinapi.
I move favorable action.
Second by Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Howe, Councilman Foley. I also want to make a note that this is also co-sponsored by the entire City Council. So thank you, Councilman Sinapi, for allowing all of us to join on as co-sponsors. Are there any questions or comments that were not made earlier this evening in committee? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
yes,
Mr. Riggs,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
yes.
9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you very much. And again, great work, Councilman Sinapi, for looking out for your constituents. We are now moving to unanimous consent. Before we talk about PCR 1522, I have to ask the question, is there any objection to hearing PCR 15-22, which is a resolution authorizing the city council president to appoint a committee of 3 council members to reappointment the wards based upon the recent census? So first question is there any objection to hearing this at this time under unanimous consent? Okay, hearing no objections, we will now hear PCR 15-22. I was the sponsor for this. We are now, as everyone knows, they're doing redistricting at the state level, and that comes down to the city level. I was not on the council when this happened 10 plus years ago. I talked to our new director of the Board of Canvassers and the city solicitor, and I asked that we do what's traditionally been done. So whatever we have done, the city of Warwick has done in the past on this issue, I asked that we do that. They forwarded me the legislation, which is before you this evening. Is a resolution which authorizes the city council president to appoint a committee of 3 council members to the reappointment of the wards based upon the recent census. So just for a quick explanation on that, that's what has traditionally been done. So that is what I brought forward. There was also a part to put some funding in there to have the census report done. We put that in the budget last year. The Board of Canvassers director, who has retired, put that in last year, so we did not need to add money. The money has already been allocated. We have a company who's done the work for us. So I believe I have invited our new director from the Board of Canvassers to join us this evening from the administration. This is her first city council meeting. So Director, welcome. And I just want to give you the floor.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I hope you can all hear me.
Yeah, it's breaking up a little, but that might be on my end. So what we're hoping is if you could just kind of explain the situation, what's before us this evening, what the process is and the deadline that we need to get this going here, that the state has a deadline for us. So one of the reasons why we put this under unanimous consent this evening.
Yes.
Okay, so the Secretary of State's office obviously keeps us informed of to what's going on day to day. We received emails from Rob Rock from the Secretary of State's office that stated that there was a commission that had gone forward. They do the major part of the redistricting with Kim Brace from Election Data Services. That I did watch that program last week. That did get passed through the commission. So now it goes on to the legislative department. They are going to be voting on this, I believe, in the second week of February, it might be. Once they approve the lines, the districts, all of that, then it comes to us citywide. And that's why we need to build the 3-person committee to help with the lines. I was told by the former director that she did speak with Kim Brace and he is on board to help us with this transition. Because obviously I have never been through redistricting either, because it's once every 10 years. So I'm learning with everybody else right now as to what is supposed to be done. So I'm going back and I'm going through resolutions, I'm going through files, I'm going through paperwork. Anything I can figure out is what I'm doing right now. The part that needs to be done on our end, the committee needs to be formed before the middle of February. So from February, I would say 15th through April 15th is when our lines in for wards, precincts, all have to be drawn, and they have to be ready and prepared to send the file to the Secretary of State's office by April 15th. And I don't know if anybody has any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, so our role, the big work gets done at the state level. We have someone that we have hired that's going to help us with our lines. Very little change is expected on the ward lines. There hasn't been that major developments or movement around, but we will look at that. Just for the members of the council, I haven't spoken to the council yet. So if
That's
this
all
is something,
I have.
okay. So if you have any, if you're interested on being on this committee, just reach out to me tomorrow and we will figure out a plan of to get this committee formed. Again, I think the goal would
Does
be
anybody have it?
as
You're welcome.
least amount of changes as possible. We're going to use the professional information that provides us with that. And then this would eventually come to the council anyway, so council members would have a vote on it as well. So everyone will be involved. We'll also follow any of the laws that are required for this committee and any type of meetings. We will work with Solicitor Walsh and the city solicitor on that as well, to make sure that we have plenty of notice and public input on this as well. So that's all the comments I have. Open up for questions from members of the city council. Okay, seeing no questions. This was not in committee. It was done under unanimous consent. So I would like to offer the opportunity for members of the public, if you would like to comment on this. If you do, you can raise your hand at this time. Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion if anyone has a motion from the city council. Councilman Howell.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Ricks, Councilman Lattiser, Councilman Foley, Councilwoman Travis. Okay, any additional questions or comments from members of the city council? Okay, hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you very much. I just, Solicitor Walsh, did I miss one of the items earlier?
If we could proceed back to PCR 9-22, which was formerly bid 2022-255B, and just re-vote it. I'm not sure if mine and the clerk's notes were synced, so if we could just re-vote it here now, just in case we skipped over it or if we had a miscommunication.
Sure. What number was that again? PCR?
9-22, bid 2022-255B, various replacement automotive parts.
Okay, thank you very much. So this was in Committee of Finance, so Councilman Howe.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley. Any other questions or concerns that weren't asked? Sorry, we skipped over this. Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy, Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you very much, and thank you for clearing that up for us. We are now under unanimous consent. Ward 1, anything to docket under unanimous consent? I think he shook his head no, but just.
Yeah, not under unanimous consent.
Okay. Ward 2, anything under unanimous consent?
Pass.
Ward 3,
Pass.
Ward 4,
Pass.
Ward 5,
Pass.
Ward 6,
Pass.
Ward 7 passes, Ward 8.
So Solicitor Walsh, do we have to mention the ordinance?
If you would like that at the February 7th meeting, you can request that now for second passage on February 7th, PCR 122.
In that case, I'd like to request that PCO 1-22 be included on the docket for unanimous consent at the next meeting.
For second passage.
Yes, please.
And that was originally in ordinance?
Yes.
It's ordinance committee. Ward 9, anything under unanimous consent?
Pass.
Councilwoman Travis.
If there be no further business of this honorable body, I move to a docket session.
Any objections to moving to the docket session? Okay, hearing none, we are now in the docket session. Ward 1, anything to docket this evening?
Yes, a resolution in regards to lowering the speed limit on Pleasant View Road from 25 miles an hour to 20. There
Public
is a
safety.
favorable traffic study.
Okay, public safety. Anything else to docket, Councilman?
Nope.
Ward 2,
Pass.
Ward 3,
Pass.
Ward 4,
Pass.
Ward 5,
Yes, Mr. President, I have a resolution to docket to rename Meadowview Avenue.
okay. Solicitor Walsh, recommendation for renaming a street?
Public safety.
Public safety.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councilman Lattiser?
No, sir.
Ward 6,
Yes, I have two, Mr. President. One is resolution in regard to erecting stop signs at Salix, Limestone, and Langley Streets where they interact with Neck Road. That's with a traffic study.
okay, so that would be public safety.
The second one is resolutions in regard to a mock crosswalk and signage to be placed on the south side of Gorton Avenue at the intersection of Horse Neck Road. That's got a traffic study also.
Public safety.
Thank you.
City Clerk, you have a question, you have a hand up?
I do. I just need the copies of the docket memos for Councilman Foley and Councilman Lattiser. I do have Councilwoman Travis, though.
All right, we will
Please.
get those out to you.
Thank you.
So Councilwoman Travis, you're all set with your two?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Ward 7, I have one, is a resolution in regards to erecting a stop sign at the intersection of Harrop Ave and Arnold's Neck Drive. I also have a traffic study with favorable action on that, so we will put that into public safety as well. That's all I have to docket at this time. Ward 8, anything to docket?
No, thank you.
Ward 9.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
All right, I just want to thank everybody before we adjourned. I think this transition went great. We went right back to remote like we had been doing it all this time. Thank you to the city clerk and Joanne and MIS people and all the directors that participated and helped us at this meeting. We will make an announcement when we get more information for the February 7th meeting. Until then, everybody stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, or as you say, stay positive, test negative. Is that what you're?
That's right. Yeah.
Good night,
everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.